evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and squirrels from around the world. So glad to see you again tonight. Well, that was fun. If you haven't checked it out, you need to go check out Cool Frog. He's so much fun. So much fun. Just had a wonderful blast with him and Shelly and Divinity, and his chat is so hilarious. I'm so glad that everybody that's here tonight is actually hanging out. I've had a really good day. I had a really good evening. Just started out this morning being on with Cool Frog. He was streaming, and that went. I think he went like 10 hours yesterday. This morning, and that he's just got a few hours of sleep, and then got back up and went back to streaming. I don't blame him. If it's that cold outside, that's what I would much rather be doing, is staying inside. So that being said, we're going to pull up this here stream. I got it already queued up. Make sure that I've got it set to nice quick speed here. I'll leave the subtitles on just in case they say something that is important. There we go. And let's do this. Let's do this. The jury's coming in. It's going to be a party.
All rise for the jury.
Oh, hey, Andrea. Good to see you over here. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hooray.
We'll go back on the record then on Mark D. Jensen, 2002 CF314. It is January 30th, 2023, Monday. Let's have the appearances, please.
Good morning. On the state of Wisconsin appears by Special Prosecutor Robert Gemboys, Deputy District Attorney Carly McNeil, and Public Service Special Prosecutor Beverly Gemboys.
Attorneys Bridget Crosby, Jerry, and Mackenzie Renner here on behalf of Mr. Mark Jensen, who appears in court. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning. It's nice to see all the jurors back this morning. Thank you for coming on time. Seeing that it's already week 4 of the trial, everybody is still here. With that, we're going to continue with the defense's case. Who's the next witness for the defense?
Our next witness will be Dr. Sarah West, but before we call her to the stand, I do have a couple of motions. Specifically, I move to admit into evidence Exhibit 97, which is Julie Jensen's UW Oshkosh transcript, Exhibits 102 and 103, which are the photos of the clown to the jury last Friday, and Exhibit 120, which is Laura Koster's resignation letter.
Any objection from the state? All right, those will be received.
Thank you. And at this time, then, we will call Dr. Sarah West to the stand.
You want to raise your right hand, remain standing. You solemnly swear the testimony in this matter to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Try to get as close as you can to the microphone. Spell your first and last name for the reporter.
It's Sarah, S-A-R-A, West, W-E-S-T.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Ryan.
Thank you. Dr. West, how are you currently employed?
I am a psychiatrist, more specifically a forensic psychiatrist. I currently work full-time doing clinical psychiatric work, seeing and treating patients with mental health disorders. Then on top of that, I also work as a forensic psychiatrist. Forensics in psychiatry means the intersection of psychiatry and the law. Anything that has to do with the law and mental health falls under that purview.
And where are you currently employed?
I do my clinical practice at a small community mental
Normal length trial. Yeah, she does have a harsh face. She's got an odd thing about her eyes, which is slightly attractive in a weird way. But she looks very unhappy right here. But she does have a harsh face, yeah. So what I do on these, in case you didn't know, Andrea, is I run these at 1.75 speed, and I skip through a lot of the other stuff. So this isn't an abnormal one. I'll usually be doing this daily, about 3 hours whenever I'm running through them quick like this.
mental health center in Akron, Ohio called Community Support Services. I also have a forensic private practice in which I provide testimony and information to attorneys who work in civil and criminal matters.
Are you affiliated with any universities?
I am. I am a clinical associate professor at Case Western University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio.
Now, as far as forensic psychiatry goes, does Case Western have any special, is there anything special about Case Western, I should ask?
Case Western, prior to his retirement, was the home of Dr. Phil Resnick, who was probably one of the nation's, if not the world's, premier forensic psychiatrists. He has testified in cases such as Jeffrey Dahmer's case, Ted Kaczynski's case, and I had the opportunity to train with him there between 2008 and 2009.
And do you currently teach there at all?
I do. So after finishing my fellowship during those years, I have continued on as a professor educating fellows in forensic psychiatry that came behind me.
Now, you indicated that you currently have patients that you're working with actively. Do you know how many patients you currently have?
Yes, I happened to pull that data just the other day, and I see 248 clinical patients on my caseload. They often have severe mental illness, and I see them quite frequently, a good chunk of them at least once a month.
And when you're working with a patient, what is your role?
My role as a psychiatrist, I am a medical doctor, I went to medical school, is to prescribe medications namely. Also, as a psychiatrist, I coordinate services that are provided by other folks at the agency. That could be case managers, psychologists, or nurses.
And as part of your job, do you diagnose mental illnesses?
Absolutely. I've spent a number of years in training to be able to do that. In order to become a board-certified forensic psychiatrist, I attended 4 years of undergraduate education at the University of Virginia, went on for 4 years of medical school at the University of Virginia, came to Case Western to complete my residency, 4 years, and then proceeded on to the fellowship, which is 1 year of subspecialty training in the very specific area of psychiatry and the law.
And are you currently board certified?
I am. To be board certified, one must have gone through all those steps, sit for a test. At the time I did this, there was also an oral exam in psychiatry. Once one has become a board certified psychiatrist, only then can one sit for the forensic boards, which is a written test. So I am board certified in both the area of general psychiatry and the subspecialty of forensic psychiatry.
Now, in addition to your residency for general psychiatry, was there any additional training that you had to do in order to be able to sit for the board certification of forensic psychiatry?
Yes, that would be a forensic fellowship where I spent 1 year in very close contact with Dr. Resnick along with my 2 co-fellows for 12 months. And we, during that time, saw private cases with Dr. Resnick. We traveled with Dr. Resnick to testify. We also saw clinical forensic patients. So it's a very comprehensive year of training.
And how long have you been board certified in general?
Let me do my little
It's
skipping
quite
here,
effective, looking at all patient treatment. We call them evaluees. And when I
because this is just
suicide risk on the date of December 3rd, 1998.
cookie.
And have you been asked to do this suicide risk assessment for any other type of cases or any other work that you've done?
I do it every day. I would be, Resnick supervised me when I was a fellow. As you sit here today making a decision in a criminal case, you are asked to do so beyond a reasonable doubt, as a framework for which to check collateral sources and verify information.
Now, when determining someone's risk for suicide, what are the kind of things that you are interested in finding out?
To break down suicide risk, we'll talk first about static risk factors. Static risk factors are things that we know put people at risk for suicide but cannot be changed. The things that I tend to clinically focus on more readily are dynamic risk factors. Dynamic risk factors are those things that can be altered in order to decrease someone's risk for suicide.
Now, as I'm sure you're aware, you heard the judge say we're in week 4 of this trial. The jury here has heard a lot of evidence in this case. Do you believe that you need to hear every single witness and every single bit of testimony in a homicide case in order to assess suicide risk for Ms. Jensen?
I do not. Again, I was asked a very specific question that relates only to Ms. Jensen's mental status at the time of her death. So there is a lot of information that you all have received that I don't necessarily need to know or weigh in my calculation of her suicide risk.
Now, when you're asked to testify, you're asked to make all of your opinions to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. Is that right?
That's correct.
And what is a reasonable degree of medical certainty mean?
So, as you sit here today making a decision in a criminal case, you are asked to do so beyond a reasonable doubt. That means because it's a criminal case and someone's liberty is up for grabs, that you would make that decision with a great deal of assurance. I am asked to offer opinions with reasonable medical certainty in that I have to tolerate a bit more uncertainty, especially in psychiatry, because we don't necessarily know everything that's going on in someone's mind. So when I'm asked to testify to a degree of reasonable medical certainty, that just means that it is more likely than not than what I say is the case, in my opinion.
Now, I'd like to start out with your report talking about mental health diagnoses. Is a mental health diagnosis part of a risk assessment for suicide?
Yes, and in particular, the diagnosis that probably places one at greatest risk for suicide is major depressive disorder. In common parlance, depression. One of the criteria for that is actually suicidal thoughts.
So when we're talking about diagnosing a mental illness, is there like a piece of literature or a book or something that you have to refer to?
Yes, so in psychiatry, we use something called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that lays out criteria for the major mental illnesses. It has been widely accepted. It is in its 5th edition at this point, and I carry my beat-up copy with me everywhere, as you can tell. We got tape on it and everything, pages falling out. So this is something that I use every day in diagnostic assessments, and this is the go-to source. It's published by the American Psychiatric Association, and as I said, its most recent edition was published in 2013 with updated criteria.
Now, for major depressive disorder, since we're already talking about that, what are the things that you have to look for in determining if someone suffers from major depressive disorder?
So the first criteria, not surprisingly, of major depression is low mood. If someone's complaining that they're feeling depressed, that of course puts you on notice that major depressive disorder might be a possible diagnosis.
And in this case, did you find any evidence of that?
I did. As a matter of fact, just 2 days prior to her death, Ms. Jensen spoke to Dr. Borman, her primary care provider, and he described her as looking miserable and depressed.
And is there a amount of time that these type of symptoms have to go on in order for us to make a diagnosis?
Yes. So in the DSM, which is a very concrete book, it suggests symptoms of major depressive disorder must occur for at least 2 weeks or greater in order to qualify for the diagnosis. Given that Ms. Jensen spoke with Dr. Borman in September of 1998 about depression, we can infer that the depression lasted for a period greater than 2 weeks, far in excess of 2 weeks, actually.
And what other criteria does what's another criteria that the DSM lays out for major depressive disorder?
So in training, we learn a mnemonic device that's called SIG-E-CAPS, and that helps us recall all 9 symptoms of major depressive disorder. Those symptoms are problems with sleep, problems with interest in activities, problems with excessive guilt, decreased energy, concentration being impaired, appetite changes, psychomotor retardation or agitation. That's to say someone feels that their physical movements are either sped up or slowed down, and then finally suicidality.
And so if we begin with the S in SIGI CAPS, can you talk to us about the S?
Sure. So S is for sleep, and one would look at both people who sleep too much and aren't sleeping at all. According to Dr. Borman's notes, Ms. Jensen was not sleeping well in the days prior to her death, to the point where he prescribed a medication indicated for sleep.
And then the I, what is the I again?
I stands for interest in activities that one used to enjoy but may not derive pleasure from anymore. Now, I did not find detailed information or collateral sources to support this in Ms. Jensen's case. That's not to say she didn't experience it, but without having the opportunity to speak to her directly, I can't confirm this.
And what is the G again?
G stands for guilt, excessive guilt. We all feel guilty, of course, about a variety of things, but this would be in excess of what's expected. I found evidence of this in Ms. Jensen's statements to a variety of people about an extramarital affair that she had had multiple years prior to 1998, indicating that she was experiencing guilt about this affair.
Then we have the E for energy, right?
Yes, E stands for decreased energy or fatigue, and Ms. Jensen, Dr. Borman reported in his notes from December 1st, 1998, that Ms. Jensen appeared fatigued.
And now on to the CAPS of SIGI CAPS. C.
C is for concentration. And though, again, I didn't find any specific evidence that could be confirmed with collateral sources that Ms. Jensen experienced this, it's not to say that she didn't.
And the A?
A is for appetite. And I will say that there is objective concrete evidence that Ms. Jensen experienced decreased appetite, namely in the fact that her weight changed she lost 8.5 pounds between September and December. That was 6.9% of her total body weight, suggesting that she had decreased appetite and was not consuming food as readily.
And then we have the P.
P is for psychomotor agitation, and that is feeling restless or unable to settle. Dr. Borman actually describes Ms. Jensen on December 1st of 1998 as very upset, distraught, and almost frantic, suggesting that she had evidence of psychomotor agitation.
And then S for
Prosecution's
suicidality.
going to tear her
that's
up.
a challenging one, because that's, of course, what we're looking at. We're looking at suicide risk. That's the question. I would offer to you that she did experience suicidal ideation, which is consistent with the major depressive disorder that I have evidence to diagnose her with.
So of the 9 criteria that we've gone through here, how many did you find?
I confirmed 6 of the 9 criteria. 5 are necessary to make a diagnosis. Again, I would suggest that suicidality was present. And then the 2 other criteria, while I didn't have objective collateral information about this, that's again not to say that she didn't experience these symptoms.
So that's 6, and maybe 7 because of suicidality?
Yes, far in excess of what's required to diagnose major depressive disorder.
So when you have said that you didn't have enough evidence to say that she suggested this certain criterion, what do you mean by that?
Again, if I were sitting with a patient, I would ask them specifically and potentially ask their loved ones if they had witnessed to these events. Because this case has occurred 20 years prior to when I had the opportunity to review the information, and the primary source of information is no longer available, I did not have concrete evidence that other people were able to provide to say that these criteria existed.
Now, when you indicated that you believe there may be suicidal ideation, what is suicidal ideation?
That is a wish to end one's own life.
And in this case, I understand that, strike that. Dr. West, you said that there may be suicidal ideation. Are you aware that Ms. Jensen told people that she was not suicidal?
Yes. And while that has been documented, I will say as a clinically practicing psychiatrist, I don't take that at face value. I would be foolish to. Of course, people who are intent upon killing themselves are not going to share with medical providers that they intend to do so.
Why not?
That would very likely lead to them going to the hospital and being put in a place where they're not capable of killing themselves. So for that reason, people are not always forthright about their thoughts to harm themselves.
Are there any other reasons that people might not be forthright other than the risk of hospitalization?
Yes, of course, suicide can be shameful. There's still a great deal, we've come a long way since 1998, but there's still a great deal of stigma attached to mental health issues and feeling like you want to hurt yourself. And I think that Ms. Jensen actually experienced this rather acutely. She had told people throughout the years that her mother was ill, and she was very concerned about being labeled, quote unquote, crazy like her mother. She did not want to lose her children over the possibility. She did not want to lose her children, which may have occurred in her mind. Again, this is her perception, that she would be hospitalized and labeled as crazy.
So we've gone through the criteria for major depressive disorder.
No, I'm sorry. That just seems a little far-fetched to me to say that. She doesn't want to lose her children, so that's why she doesn't want to go to the hospital, yet she's going to self-delete. Sorry, that just seems weird, but I don't know. I don't know. Weird to me.
And do you have an opinion held to a reasonable degree of medical certainty on what Ms. Jensen's diagnosis is?
Yes, it is my opinion, with a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that at the time of her death on December 3rd, 1998, she was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, recurrent, because there is evidence to suggest that she had had previous depressive episodes.
Now, history of depression or diagnosis, is that one of those static factors that you talked about?
Yes, any historical information is static because we can't change history. So her previous episodes and history of mental health issues do represent a static risk factor.
What other static risk factors did you consider in this case?
I also considered her family history. I just talked a little bit about her mom's own history of mental health. Her brother also confirmed that he himself made a suicide attempt at the age of 17.
Are there any other static factors that you had to consider in this case?
I also considered the idea that historically, Ms. Jensen was not necessarily forthright with treatment providers. For example, when she was seeing Mr. DeFazio in 1991, she chose not to disclose the information that at that time she was having an affair. She was engaged in therapy. You would think that that would be a very important piece of information for her therapist to know and assist her in processing.
And I'd like to turn now to talking about some dynamic risk factors. And can you explain again what the difference between static and dynamic is?
Sure. So dynamic risk factors are important to assess because those are things that are able to be changed. The first and most obvious dynamic risk factor, in my estimation, is her current symptomatology. She was in the midst of a major depressive episode, and that is amenable to treatment. So again, one would target a dynamic risk factor for treatment in an effort to help someone feel better.
So the actual diagnosis of major depressive disorder plays into suicide risk?
Absolutely. Again, one of the criteria for major depressive disorder is suicidality.
What other things that was Ms. Jensen experiencing at that time based on your review that would be a dynamic factor?
So let me take a moment to explain what depression feels like. It's a very common scenario. We talk about it in everyday parlance. I'm so depressed. Major depression is serious. It leads to death. And that is because people feel hopeless and helpless and don't know how to get out of this chasm that they feel that they're trapped in. So while we may see them from up above and realize there's an end to their feeling bad, they don't necessarily see that. Depression is a very difficult disease to live with. And it's important to recognize that our perception of depression from the outside is not what somebody's experiencing internally. So in reviewing these dynamic risk factors from Ms. Jensen's perspective, it's important to put ourselves in her shoes.
And in your estimation, were there any feelings of loss being experienced by Ms. Jensen?
Why don't you just rephrase it, Ms. Jenner?
Dr. West, in coming to your conclusion, you studied these dynamic risk factors. Is an experience of loss something that would be a risk factor?
Yes. So that's a pretty serious risk factor. And at the time when Ms. Jensen's death occurred, I believe that she experienced, again, this is from her perspective, what she felt to be multiple losses. And this may not, again, be readily apparent to people outside of her, but this was her personal experience. First of all, she spoke about her youngest growing up and going off to daycare and not having a baby at home anymore. That was an acute loss for her. She also spoke of not having much of a support system. And this is indicated by the idea that she turned to people that she felt, or rather from the outside, looked like they were not very close to her. As a matter of fact, it does seem that to the outside observer, she had a good support system. She was married. She had a best friend who was also her sister-in-law. Those are not the people that she confided in with very important and personal information. She shared this with a casual neighbor, as well as a teacher that she'd only known a few months. That to me suggests that she did not feel like she had anyone she could turn to for support.
Ooh.
Now, you earlier said something about the label of crazy affecting her. How did that affect her?
I do think that she was particularly sensitive to this. Nobody wants to be labeled crazy, but because of her own personal history with her mother, this really hit her in a very different way. I think she was very concerned about losing her children over the idea that she would be labeled crazy and unable to care for them.
Now, did Ms. Jensen appear to have any misperceptions about her situation?
So as we just talked about in regard to the losses, as well as her feelings that she was losing her children and losing her marriage, I also feel like she was misperceiving other portions of reality. She was described as being odd on a number of occasions by her sister-in-law, who knew her quite well, and she expressed concern about different things that didn't seem to add up. And this was historical as well. For example, she reported multiple years prior this incident that involved both her sister-in-law best friend as well as her husband when she was frantic about feces being smeared in the bathroom. When the sister-in-law and her husband came home, this was not at all the case. So there's some historical evidence as well as contemporary evidence to December 1st that she had some difficulties with perceiving reality around her.
Now, additionally, you're aware that Ms. Jensen made some statements that she
My
was in
thoughts,
fear of her
precisely.
husband. How did that play into your analysis?
I certainly took that into account. She did report that to her neighbors. But again, given that her perception was distorted in terms of her support and her losses, I had concern that perhaps she wasn't perceiving this correctly as well.
And what would make you think that?
That would be based on some facts that I think are important to note. while she stated that she was fearful of her husband, she was a woman of means. She had access to the family's finances. She was a very bright woman and was well aware of the resources available to her, and she chose not to pursue any of these resources. There are a couple of very specific examples of that. Namely, the neighbor, Mr. Voigt, offered her both money and a place to stay after she shared with him that she was fearful. She did not take him up on that. And the teacher, Ms. DeFazio, offered to help connect her with a woman's shelter where she could go to be out of danger related to her husband. And again,
It just seems a little weird for a guy to come up and offer someone money and a place to stay. I mean, unless she's truly worried then and she's feeling that she's in danger, then I don't know. It just seems that it's not just him and his wife offering that, it's just him. It seems a little strange to me.
and she chose not to pursue this.
And I believe there was one other person that also offered her an out. Is that correct?
Yes, her sister-in-law also suggested that she could remove herself from the situation and had the means to do so. And she did not, again, do that upon the advice of her best friend, sister-in-law.
Now, this jury did hear evidence previously that Ms. Jensen appeared flat at times when talking about
It
issues.
might be a little
What does that mean to you as a
quid pro
psychiatrist?
quo.
When I see somebody who is flat or cannot express emotion, I'm concerned about two things. The first would be depression, to the extent where they can't feel anything. The second would be a different serious diagnosis, psychosis. It's actually one of the things that can precipitate a flat affect or lack of emotional expression.
Is there anything about isolation in this case that struck you in making your risk assessment?
I do think that Ms. Jensen set up a window for herself in which she would be capable of ending her life. And by that, I can give you some very specific examples. She shared with her best friend and sister-in-law preemptively, even prior to seeing her medical provider, that she would be started on medication, that she would experience side effects to this medication, and therefore not to worry if she didn't come with her son to karate practice. That would be on December 2nd. On December 2nd, she also called her neighbors and told them if they didn't see her outside, they were not to worry because she was okay. And then she also wrote a note to the teacher, Ms. DeFazio, on that day that she would not be in because she was not well. So she had almost created a space for herself in which people who would be concerned about her not presenting to a variety of activities had been given notice as to where she was.
Is that something that you see in people who are suicidal?
Yes. For example, a hunter who tells his wife that he's going away for the weekend to hunt. He's created a window in which he would be alone naturally, and he has a weapon that would be used for what appear to be benign purposes. And instead, of course, he's created a space for himself to end his life.
Don't ever do that.
Now, this jury did hear evidence, and you've alluded to this, that on December 1st, Julie Jensen was reaching out to her doctor, Dr. Borman, about depression. Why would someone get help a few days before taking their own life?
It's been my experience clinically that people who do develop thoughts of killing themselves are ambivalent about it. And by ambivalence, I mean that they have both very strong feelings about wanting to live and very strong feelings about wanting to die. And so when they're feeling strongly that they want to live, that would be an opportunity to reach out for help, but they may have second thoughts about that. So there's a lot of back and forth in people who are experiencing thoughts of harming themselves.
Now, I believe we've had conversations about hesitation marks and things along those lines. What are hesitation marks?
So hesitation marks would be physical signs that I might look for in somebody who is thinking about ending their life by cutting themselves and engages in practice. And that is could be manifested in a variety of ways in other people who had thought of other means to harm themselves. For example, Russian roulette with a gun or making a noose but not hanging oneself. There's some rehearsal that goes into, especially due to ambivalence, one's practice in killing themselves.
And was there anything in this case that might be considered a hesitation or a practice?
I believe that Miss Jensen was unwell at a time when her husband was away, and the source of that is unclear. But that could be potentially related to an attempt or a trial run at harming herself.
So, with this ambivalence that you've spoken about, are there times when that leads to someone making a decision that I'm trying to figure out how to say this right? How does that affect a person's actions in the days or weeks leading up to a suicide?
I think that ambivalence causes a lot of conflicting information. People may reach out for help and then retreat. People may see the doctor, but then not take the medications that are prescribed. I think you get a lot of pieces of conflicting information.
In other words, we don't
So,
know.
in your estimation, as a forensic psychiatrist in this matter, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to Julie Jensen's suicide risk?
I do.
And what is that opinion?
It is my opinion with a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Ms. Jensen on December 3rd, 1998 was at high risk for suicide based on the factors we discussed. An additional factor that I would like to add in that I did consider was Ms. Coster's report on the last time that she saw Ms. Jensen, that Ms. Jensen was unusually emotive and shared with her how much she appreciated Ms. Coster's support and loved her. And Ms. Coster qualified this as being almost like a goodbye.
Now, We've already talked about statements Julie Jensen made indicating that she is not suicidal. Do those statements, again, does that change your opinion at all?
No, not at all.
Can an educated person commit suicide?
Yes, as we know, anyone can commit suicide. It's always a tragic event and a terrible loss, but it affects everyone.
And do devoted mothers commit suicide?
Yes, people with children commit suicide. People with parents commit suicide. People with brothers and sisters commit suicide.
Do people you would describe as kind and loving commit suicide?
Yes, amazing people commit suicide every day. It's a national problem, and since this time, there has been a national hotline that's been instituted to assist people with suicidal thoughts.
So if you're ever feeling that way, just reach out to somebody. Please. Please.
No further questions.
Who's doing the cross? Go ahead, Mr. Chambers.
So, doctor, let's talk about sticky caps. That's how you pronounce it, right? Sticky caps?
Yes.
Because I pronounced it side caps the other day, and that was wrong. So the expert didn't know what I was talking about. So sticky cap starts with sleep, correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that because Julie was manifesting sleep problems, that's the first the S in sticky cap stands for sleep problems, correct?
Yes.
Were you aware of the fact that Julie had seen Dr. Borman on December 1st? Correct?
Yes.
And on December 1st, Dr. Borman has no notes at all that reflect any kind of a sleep problem. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And you are aware that Dr. Borman has expressed familiarity, that he knows what sticky caps is, and he does kind of a thumbnail sketch of that in his 15-minute interview with his patients. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
And he indicated that if there had been sleep problems, he would have noted that in his notes, and he did not note anything about sleep problems on December 1st, 1998. So are you aware of that?
That he indicated that if there were sleep problems, he would have noted it.
Yes.
Okay.
So the only issue about sleep problems didn't come from Julie Jensen, did it?
That's correct. It came from Mark Jensen.
Yes, Mark Jensen. And Mark Jensen, in addition to her being husband, is also a murder suspect in this case. You're aware of that, correct?
He was not at the time.
Well, actually, he was. His wife, Julie Jensen, suspected that Mark was trying to murder her. You were aware of that, weren't you?
Yes, but he was not a murder suspect on December 1st, 1998.
Well, his wife suspected that he was trying to kill her, right?
Yes.
And she did not express that to Dr. Borman, did she?
She did not.
But she did express it to her friend and next-door neighbor, Ted Voigt, correct?
Correct.
And she expressed that thought to her son's third-grade teacher, Teresa Fazio, correct?
Correct.
And she expressed that thought to her best
Yes.
friend, who happened to be Mark Jensen's sister, Laura Custer.
Was.
Isn't that true?
Yes.
And do
Same
you recall,
guy.
Julie Jensen then later recounted that conversation that she had with Laura Custer. Were you aware of that?
In what way?
Are you aware that Julie Jensen told her next-door neighbor, Todd Coster, and she also told her friend, or her teacher, Teresa
And that's
Fazio,
his wife
that,
behind him. Just so you
when
know, that's
Julie had told
that
Lori that she
lady
thought Mark
behind
was
him.
trying to
That's his
kill her.
wife.
Objection, hearsay.
It's been actually, this goes to this witness's perception of Julie Jensen being
Take a break,
delusional.
folks.
I'm sorry, what?
We're going to let the jury go out.
No, they're going to take a little break. I'm going to grab myself a beverage. This will take but a second.
All right, the jury's outside of the courtroom. Are you objecting, Ms. Renner, to what Julie Jensen said to Mr. Mark Jensen's sister?
No, Your Honor. So this is actually, I believe what Mr. Jambois is trying to bring into this cross-examination is that Julie Jensen told the Voights, or Ms. DeFazio, that she had a conversation with Laura, and Laura said blah, 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 about, or not blah, 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 but said that Ms. Coster was basically agreeing.
Why don't I make the offer of proof? What Ted Voigt testified to, and what Teresa Fazio will testify to, is that when Julie told her about her conversation with Laura Coster, who was her best friend, but was also Mark Jensen's brother, our sister, she told him, Laura Coster told Julie Jensen, I lived with him for 18 years. You have no idea what he's capable of. Now, Laura Coster has denied making that statement, but there are two independent witnesses who indicated that Julie Jensen did recount that to Laura Coster, or did recount that that's what Laura Coster said to her. And the question is whether or not that reflects that maybe Julie was not, she was not delusional. She was not detached from reality about her concerns about her perception that her husband was trying to kill her. Defense counsel, this witness indicated her perception was, I forgot, her perception was just, what was the term you said? Distorted.
But
Her
we
perception was
love
distorted.
them.
Reading my own handwriting. Her perception was distorted. So if her perception was influenced by those around her, then that it wouldn't reflect to me that her perception was distorted. She had good reason to believe that Mark Jensen was trying to kill her because his own sister had told her, I lived with him for 18 years. You have no idea what he's capable of. Now, Laura Coster's denying that, but Laura Coster lied under oath the other day. She's a biased witness.
We don't have the jury in front.
I know, but she's a biased witness, Your Honor.
All right, I'll give you one more response.
Your Honor, this is multiple levels of hearsay deep here. And Ms. Coster denies making any such statement. We don't have Ms. Jensen here to say that, yes, Laura said that. We have
He
multiple
might
layers
like
of hearsay
it too
here, and I
much.
don't believe that
So
it's
you
being
got to be
offered
careful
just
what
for
you
Ms.
ask for.
Jensen's perception, but I believe it's being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Why don't you do it as a hypothetical question?
Okay, I will do that, but I would say this, Your Honor. Mark Jensen has forfeited his right to challenge any hearsay.
That's why
they
I'm
have no right to
laughing.
make any hearsay objections to anything that Julie Jensen said because he forfeited his right to do that. That's what the Wisconsin Supreme Court said, and that's what the Wisconsin Court of Appeals said, and that's the law of the case. They have no hearsay objection to anything that Julie Jensen said.
All right, we're
Oh,
bringing back the
he's
jury. We'll
getting
do it as a hypothetical.
angry again. Oh, he is getting so angry. God, I love it. Oof. so angry, so frantic. It's such. Well, if you watch, you'll probably see Nathan DeBruin there. You got to watch out for the big cameraman. There's a big cameraman that looks like he's, really
We're back on the
working it
record.
sometimes.
Mark Jensen, the appearances are the same. The jury's back in the courtroom. Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. You can ask your question, Mr. Danboys.
Thank you. So, Dr. Ward, I'm going to start over again. I'm
It's
sorry, Dr.
West.
West. I'm sorry, Dr. West. You recounted in your testimony some conversations that Julie Jensen had with Laura Coster, correct?
Yes.
And one of those conversations was when Julie Jensen showed Laura Coster a photograph of a Post-it note that she found in Mark Jensen's day planner. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when Julie Jensen was showing that Post-it note to Laura Coster, that's when Laura Coster had, according to what you said, Laura Coster offered to provide her with assistance if she needed to go somewhere, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you aware that Julie Jensen had also discussed that conversation she had with Laura Coster with 2 other people? Were you aware of that?
No.
She discussed that conversation. You weren't aware that she discussed her conversation with Laura Coster. She discussed that with Ted Voigt, and she also discussed it with Teresa Fazio. Were you aware of that?
I don't recall that specifically, no.
Now, you indicated that you thought one of the reasons that you thought that Julie was suffering from major depressive disorder is because her perception of reality was distorted, correct?
Yes.
And one of the reasons that you thought her perception of reality was distorted is because she thought her husband may be trying to kill her, correct?
Yes.
Were you aware that when Julie Jensen described this conversation that she had with Laura Coster to Ted Voigt,
Again, objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. Go ahead.
were you aware that at the time that Julie Jensen had this conversation, or just later described this conversation that she'd have with Laura Coster when she described it to Ted Voigt and to Teresa Fazio, that Julie Jensen described Laura Coster's reaction to seeing that note and having this conversation? Were you aware of that?
No.
Okay, well, hypothetically speaking, if Julie Jensen told Ted Voigt and told Teresa Fazio that when she showed this Post-it note to Laura Coster and expressed her concerns to Laura Coster replied, "I lived with him for 18 years. You have no idea what he's capable of." If hypothetically that's what Laura Coster said to Julie Jensen, would that not indicate that perhaps her perception of reality was not distorted, that in fact she had reason to believe that her husband was trying to kill her?
I'm not sure how to interpret that statement in terms of not knowing what he's capable of. That seems relatively non-specific.
So Julie Jensen presents Laura
Turning
Coster,
red again.
who is the sister of Mark Jensen, with this information.
Yeah,
and her
big boy with
suspicions
the
that
chops.
Her husband,
He's always
Laura
looking
Coster's
like
brother,
he's
maybe trying to kill her.
like beating it a little bit.
And Laura Coster's response, "I lived with him for 18 years. You have no idea what he's capable of." You don't know what inference to draw from that?
No.
And you've got a medical degree and a PhD, a medical degree, and you're a forensic psychiatrist, and you have no idea what inference you could possibly draw from that? Do you think the fact that Julie Jensen might possibly draw the inference that, gee, maybe my husband is trying to kill me, do you think that means her perception of reality was distorted?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you think that if Julie Jensen drew the inference that, gee, maybe my husband really is trying to kill me after what Laura Coster said to you, do you think that's an unreasonable inference for her to draw?
I don't know what inference she drew from that because it seems like a vague statement.
"I lived with him for 18 years. You have no idea what he's capable of." That seems like a vague statement.
Yes.
Now, Laura Coster talked to you years and years after this, after the death of Julie Jensen, correct?
Yes.
It was many years later. Was it in 2010, 2012? Do you remember when it was?
2017.
2017. So in 2017, she was giving you all this information about Julie that would reflect that possibly Julie was depressed or had a major depressive disorder, correct?
No, we only spoke for 5 minutes. She confirmed that she provided what she provided in testimony at the time of the trial.
Okay, so and you said when you were looking at this case, among the criteria, one of the things you looked at was a psychiatric case study written
Yes,
by Herzl Spiro
I
on May
agree.
26, 2004. Is that correct?
Yes,
Did you attach much weight to that study or that report?
I did not.
But you did review it.
I looked at it, yes.
And you said you interviewed Mark Jensen in this case.
I did.
But you see, I didn't see that as a source of information here on your letter to Ms. Vishny.
That's correct.
So how much time did you spend talking to Mark Jensen?
5 hours.
And you left that off your thing here. So maybe we should add that 5-hour interview with Mark Jensen. How much significance did you attach to that information?
As I explained earlier, I used it as a framework to confirm
So
information
good.
with other sources. I did not use him as a direct source of information, given his vested interest in this case.
So
Thank
did you ask
you.
him about whether or not he had emotionally and psychologically tortured his wife in the years preceding her death?
I did not.
Were you aware that the jury in this case has heard evidence that Mark Jensen had launched a years-long campaign of harassment and emotional torture and psychological gaslighting of Julie Jensen that lasted from 1992 through 1998?
So you say?
Were you aware of that?
Yes.
But you didn't ask Mark Jensen about that?
No,
Are you of the impression that that was somebody else that did that it wasn't Mark Jensen that did that?
I don't know.
Well, would that affect Julie's perception of reality if she had reason to suspect that her husband was the one who was doing that? Would she then have further reason to suspect maybe her husband was trying to kill her?
Repeat the question?
Well, if in fact at the time that Julie Jensen was upset and distraught about the circumstances of her marriage and also was concerned that her husband was trying to kill her, with the fact that she had reason to believe that for the preceding 7 years he had been subjecting her to a campaign of abuse, harassment, and seeking to demean her and humiliate her, if she had reason to believe that, would her perception of reality be distorted because she suspected her husband was trying to kill her?
I don't think that's been verified as a fact.
Oh,
There you go.
But if it was, hypothetically,
Well,
let's say the jury
hypothetically,
here
if
to your right, my left, let's say they've heard evidence
my
that would
uncle
pretty
had
clearly indicate that Mark Jensen was the person
no
doing that,
balls,
leaving these,
would he
making
be
these hang-up phone
considered
calls,
my
leaving these
aunt?
pornographic photos around the house, and
Hey,
basically rubbing Julie's nose in them. If the jury had reason to believe that Mark Jensen was the
be
person that was doing
fair.
that, might that lend further credence to Julie Jensen's perception of reality that her husband might be possibly trying to kill her?
If he was the one responsible for those things, it may impact her mental status. Yes.
But also reflect that her perception of reality was not distorted. That in fact, she had a pretty darn good perception of reality. If she thought her husband had a motive to kill her, if he'd not forgiven her for an affair that she had years and years earlier.
Could you repeat the question?
If in fact Julie Jensen believed that Mark Jensen never forgave her for the affair that she had years and years earlier, and if in fact Mark Jensen manifested his hatred for his wife by doing all these hang-up phone calls, this emotional torture, leaving photos around the house for her to find, and or telling him she got
It's
them,
not a
telling her that
fact.
he got them at work. If in fact he did that, that would lend credence to
But
Julie
it's
Jensen's
not a
perception
fact.
of reality at the time that her husband was trying to kill her, wouldn't it?
I actually heard two hypothetical scenarios there.
Okay.
To which one are you referring?
Well, either one of them, would either one of those cause you to believe that Julie Jensen reality when she suspected that her husband might be trying to kill her?
If either one of those scenarios was correct,
Yes.
yes, I would say that that would lend some credence to the idea that she had reason to be fearful of her husband.
In the CE cap thing, you emphasized guilt. You said that Ms. Jensen was feeling guilt about an affair she had years earlier, correct?
Yes.
But Julie Jensen never indicated that she was feeling guilty about it. Are you aware that what she actually told Dr. Borman is that her husband had never forgiven her for it? Would that indicate that she was feeling guilt, or would that indicate that, that her husband had never forgiven her for it?
I think it does indicate guilt.
What about, are you aware that Dave Nearing testified in this matter, and he testified that he knew Mark Jensen very, very well, and during the whole time that he knew Mark Jensen never forgave Julie Jensen for that one weekend affair that she'd had years and years and years earlier. Were you aware of that?
I think that's his perception.
Well, his perception based upon his communications with Mark Jensen. Well, in your 5-hour interview with Mark Jensen, did you ask him, is it true that you never forgave your wife for having an affair, one weekend affair, 7 years before she's died?
I did not.
And if he told you, that's true, I never forgave her, I hated her because she had that affair 7 years, that one weekend affair 7 years earlier, I never forgave her for it, I hated her for it, would that influence your perception of whether or not Julie Jensen was suffering from major depressive disorder, or that she was just scared because she thought her husband might be trying to kill her?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
yes. Come on.
No.
That would not affect your perception of whether Julie Jensen was, her perception of reality was distorted?
No, you asked about major depressive disorder.
Well, but one of the reasons that you think she's suffering from major depressive disorder is because you felt that her perception of reality was distorted. Didn't you say that,
That's
doctor?
some good
I think
weed.
that's part of the process and the diagnosis.
So if in fact her perception of reality was not distorted, then that would undermine your diagnosis, wouldn't it?
No.
So even if her perception of reality was not in the least bit distorted, then your diagnosis remains the same.
Yes.
And even though she didn't complain of any sleep disorder, your diagnosis remains the same.
Yes.
So whose perception of reality is at issue here, yours or Julie Jensen's? Because it seems that you say these things were important, that they were part of your diagnosis,
Objection,
and then when they're
argument.
refuted, they had no effect on your diagnosis at all. Isn't that true?
We're going to rephrase it. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. Let's rephrase it.
I'm trying to get your perception of reality here, doctor.
No,
You
she-
indicated that.
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative, and the tone here is argumentative.
Take
Exactly.
one step at a time, Mr. Chairman.
Go off.
So, doctor, you testified earlier on direct examination that one of the reasons you believe that Julie Jensen suffered from major depressive disorder is because her perception was distorted, correct?
No.
Oh, you didn't say that? I got the notes wrong. Her perception was distorted. You didn't say that?
No, I said she met criteria for major depressive disorder, and because of major depressive disorder, her perceptions were distorted.
Oh, but now you've learned that her perception in this respect, at least, was not distorted, correct?
I have not learned that.
You don't believe that Julie Jensen had any reason to believe that her husband was actually trying to kill her?
I don't. I believe her perception about that was distorted.
What was it? It was distorted by her major depressive disorder.
Yes.
And the evidence that her perception was distorted was exactly what? What about Julie Jensen's perception was distorted?
That she believed, she reported to others that her husband was trying to harm her, but her actions didn't match the belief that she shared. If she truly believed that he was trying to hurt her and she had all her faculties about her, I believe she would have sought help as a woman of means who had access to such ways of avoiding her husband and avoiding harm to herself.
So in your experience,
There you go.
women who are victims of domestic violence always leave as soon as they have the ability to do so?
No.
So in point of fact, many women who are in abusive domestic relationships remain with them because they want to make it work. So
But he never, this guy's so annoying because he's saying that he wasn't abusive. He was basically gaslighting her the whole way. It's weird. Yes, he does, Lenny. He does think it's more dramatic, and he's turning beet red. And it's really weird because him and his wife almost look like they're brother and sister instead of husband and wife.
So they take the risk of additional abuse, don't they, at the hands of their abusers?
Are we talking about Miss Jensen? Because I don't believe there's evidence to suggest she was in a relationship involving domestic violence.
Well,
Oh, there we go.
what about, so you don't think that a years-long campaign of terror and humiliation
Object.
directed against her by her husband, you don't think that's a sign of an abusive relationship?
I don't have evidence that that occurred.
Okay, well, you know that there were years and years and years of hang-up phone calls directed at Julie Jensen, correct?
I do.
And you are aware that there were years and years of obscene pornographic penis photos being left around her house and being left at Mr. Jensen's place of business, correct?
Yes.
So, would my wife find it abusive if I left pictures of penises laying around for her to see? Well, I think she would think I was probably pretty weird. Probably laugh at me and burn the stuff, but
And you are aware that Mark Jensen told Julie that it was Perry Tarika that was doing that, correct?
I was aware that it is unknown who the perpetrator was.
You are aware that Julie Jensen repeatedly called the police about this, correct?
Yes.
And you are aware that Julie was very obviously upset about this, wasn't she?
Yes.
And in fact, Mark Jensen indicated that when he raised this issue with her, it would be very upsetting to Julie, correct?
I could see where that would be the case. Yes.
Well, that's what he said when he was interviewed by Detective Ratsburg. He said it was very
objection
upsetting to her.
grounds.
I don't know that to be true, but I assume so.
And he also told Paul Ratsburg that sometimes he'd get angry, as he put it, pissed, and he'd then show these photos to Julie. Were you aware of that?
Not specifically, no.
Okay, well, assume hypothetically that Mark Jensen
Well,
told
now you're talking
Detective Ratsburg,
hypothetical.
yeah,
What,
he
did
pissed
it
off and
happen,
bring up
or
these
is
photos
it
and
hypothetical?
show them to Julie. So hypothetically, assume that's true, that would reflect that
Ugh.
Mark Jensen was using these photos as a means by which to upset and humiliate his wife, correct?
No, I wouldn't characterize it like that.
Were you aware that the Pleasant Prairie Police Department investigated these matters thoroughly, and they both, the officers that looked at this case, including a private investigator that looked at this case, they all told Julie that it was Mark Jensen was doing this. Were you aware of that?
No.
Well, hypothetically, let's assume for a moment that when the police investigated this matter,
Stop speaking in hypotheticals. It does not go well for you. Only provide what you can prove.
all the police officers who investigated and the private investigator who investigated all told her that it's not Perry Tarika that's doing this. It's Mark Jensen that's doing this. Assuming that's the case, would you still think that her perception of reality was distorted by the fact that she suspected her husband may be trying to harm her?
Again,
Wait
to
till he
clarify, I
starts
don't know that the
shaking,
perpetrator
Lainey.
was ever identified, but hypothetically speaking, if
You'll
that
see it.
were the
You'll
case,
start shaking
then yes, I
and
would assume
avoid
that
it.
that would be something that she could interpret to mean that her husband was
He
upset or
will
angry with her.
die.
And she had reason to believe that, right? She had reason to believe in the weeks and months preceding her death, she had reason to believe the following things. Number one, she had reason to believe that her husband was having an affair, didn't she?
Yes.
And you are aware that her husband was having an affair, correct?
Yes.
And you are aware that her husband had made plans to go off on a cruise somewhere with his lover, Kelly Labonte, or at that time, Kelly Greenman, that he was planning to do that sometime in 1999. You were aware of that, right?
Yes.
And his lover, Kelly Greenman, divorced her husband, correct?
Yes.
And Julie Jensen just conveniently disappeared. I mean, just died. Wasn't that convenient for Mark Jensen? He could have Kelly
Objection
Greenman.
argument.
He's asking a question. Go ahead, ask it.
Wasn't it very convenient for Mark Jensen?
He's not
that
asking
his
a
lover
question.
divorced her husband and his wife just suddenly died, so he didn't have to worry about taking care of his wife, so he could go on this cruise with Kelly Greenman. That was very convenient, wasn't it?
No, I don't think the loss of a spouse is typically described as convenient. I think there are a number of ways to terminate a marriage that don't end in the death of a spouse.
Sure, and if Mark Jensen was planning on going off with his girlfriend Kelly Greenman, then you'd think he might be looking into ways to accomplish that objective. Like maybe he'd be looking up divorce lawyers, right? He'd be looking for a divorce, looking at divorce lawyers, right?
I think the time frame is important to consider here. It was 1998. I don't know that people looked things up on the internet quite as readily as they do these days.
Oh, so you mean to tell me that in your hours and hours of looking at this case and interviewing Mark Jensen, you never asked him about all the internet research he did in this case?
I did not ask him about all the internet research he
Well,
did.
did you ask him about any of the internet research he did?
I don't recall specifically.
Did you ask him about looking up poisons on the internet? Did you ask him about that?
No.
You are aware that there was an extensive internet search on Mark Jensen's computer for botulism, ethylene glycol, and a variety of other poisonous substances. Are you aware of that?
My understanding was that it was a family computer.
Oh, so you're saying it wasn't. So you are aware of these searches then, you're telling us.
Yes.
Okay. So you are aware that people were doing internet searches on the Jensen
funny.
home computer, correct?
Yes.
But none of those searches pertain to divorce lawyers, did they?
Not to my knowledge. No.
And none of them pertain to, say, child custody issues, did they?
Not to my knowledge.
So
Mhm.
whoever was using the Jensen family computer, they weren't looking for a divorce lawyer. They weren't looking up things about support requirements. They were just looking up botulism, pressing garlic, which by the way apparently causes botulism, pipe bombs, mercury fulminate, and a wide variety of other things. They were looking up things like that on the internet. You're aware of that?
Yes.
So you are aware that people can look things up on the internet and do internet searches, correct? Back in 1998.
Yes.
And you are aware that Mark Jensen did not spend any time looking up divorce lawyers. In fact, nobody looked up divorce lawyers on the Jensen home computer in 1998, did they?
I don't know that Mark Jensen didn't look up divorce.
It's called a douche flute. Come on, get with it. It's called a douche flute. Get it right. Douche flute.
Lawyers.
Well, hypothetically speaking, then, assume for a moment that a computer analyst examined the hard drive of the Jensen family home computer and found absolutely no evidence of any searches for divorce lawyers. Would that cause you to infer that perhaps nobody looked up divorce lawyers on the internet on the Jensen home computer?
Yes, on that particular computer.
And on that particular computer, there were all these emails between Mark Jensen and Kelly Labonte, where Mark Jensen was clearly having an affair with Kelly Labonte, Kelly Greenman, correct? You were aware of that, right?
Yes.
And during this one particular exchange in mid-October of 1998, when Kelly Greenman is talking about, well, we have these issues, and Mark Jensen replied, well, the details are just noise in the bigger picture, correct? That's what he said. Remember that?
I don't.
Well, Kelly Greenman was talking about her issues. She was talking about her husband, and she was talking about divorcing him. When she specifically asked Mark what he was going to do about his issues, he replied, details are just noise in the bigger picture of things. You weren't aware of that? He said that?
No.
Do you know what a narcissist is?
Yes.
Tell the truth what a narcissist is.
Look over here at the prosecutor. Ladies and gentlemen, perfect example of a narcissist right there. If you're wondering what a narcissist looks like, just look at the actions of the prosecutor. There you go.
In layman's terms or diagnostic terms?
Well, in the terms that us mortals would understand. So the jury and I can understand you.
So narcissist is common parlance for something in the DSM called narcissistic personality disorder. Those are typically people who feel that they are more important than others. They enjoy interacting with people that they consider of their stature or greater. They tend to be arrogant, condescending, and enjoy status and only associate people with people who they consider to have equal or greater status.
I heard a psychiatrist on TV once said that to a narcissist, the narcissist is the sun and the rest of us are all planets. Does that sound like a pretty apt description?
That's a pretty good analogy, yes.
So when Mark Jensen's talking about his wife and his two sons, and he refers to them as just detail, as noise in the greater picture of things, does that sound like maybe a narcissistic response on Mark Jensen?
I didn't assess Mark Jensen's personality or any personality disorders that he might have.
Yeah, I know. You were just focusing on Julie Jensen. You indicated on direct that it's important to put ourselves in the shoes of Julie Jensen.
Yes.
Do you think that that's what you did in this case?
Yes.
So you think that because she didn't take up the offer of Laura Coster that she could go somewhere, or she didn't take up the offer of Teresa Fazio to go to Women's and Children's Horizons, and she didn't take up the offer of Ted Voigt to go off somewhere, that reflected that, well, what did that reflect in your eyes, putting yourself in Julie Jensen's shoes? What did that mean to you?
You really don't want to go down this road, prosecutor. You're going to lose it.
I think that's evidence of her distorted perception of reality.
What if well, you are aware that Julie Jensen told Ted Voigt that she wasn't sure if her husband was actually trying to kill her, or actually leaving these things around the house for her to find so that she would think he was trying to kill her, and then she would do something stupid and then he'd take the kids away from her. You are aware that that's the conversation that Julie Jensen had with Ted Voigt, right?
I know that she was fearful of losing her children.
Because her husband would make her do something that would make her look crazy and then she'd lose her children, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, Julie Jensen was talking to Ted Voigt, and she told Ted Voigt what her husband was doing. He was trying to get her to drink things, and she wouldn't drink things or eat things because she thought he was trying to poison her. You remember that, correct?
Yes.
Then she also said, but I'm not sure. Is he trying to kill me, or is he just trying to make me crazy, do something crazy so that I will call the police and then I'll be the one that looks crazy because they'll get rid of all the evidence?
Dude needs to get his head out of his ass and get off of this, because he's losing. He's losing badly, in my opinion.
Did you understand? Do you remember that she said that to Ted Voigt?
Yes, I recall her expressing concern about the potential of being harmed and some confusion about what was happening at home.
Now, you say she should have taken advantage of these offers. You know, she did call the police, right? She called the police.
She did.
And the police came out, and she gave them the film that she had taken. Back then it was 35 millimeter camera, so she gave them the rolls of 35 millimeter film. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, I'm also aware that she didn't show them any physical evidence.
You don't think that photographs are physical evidence?
No.
They were at the house. She did not show them the things that she had taken photographs of.
Yeah, all she did was hand them the film, correct?
Correct.
And then the police developed the film, correct?
I assume so.
And they gave her the photographs. I mean, she showed one of the photographs that they finished. They gave back to her. She showed that to Laura Coster, didn't she?
Yes, I will assume so.
She showed Laura Coster the photograph of the Post-it note that was on Mark Jensen's day planner, correct?
Yes.
And there's no question that Mark Jensen wrote that Post-it note, is there, in your mind?
No, I assume that he did.
And when the police recovered the day planner on December 3rd, the Post-it note was gone. You aware of that?
No.
Well, hypothetically, why don't you accept the proposition that the Post-it note was gone when the police recovered his day planner on December 3rd, 1998? So that would indicate that somebody got rid of the Post-it note, right?
Yes.
So the evidence that was left out, maybe possibly for her to see, she saw it, and then he got rid of it. Somebody got rid of it. Either Mark Jensen got rid of it or Julie Jensen got rid of it, correct?
It was no longer there, yes.
So maybe Julie Jensen might have had, putting herself in her shoes, maybe she might have had a reason to think that her husband was trying to make her look crazy, so that she'd report him to the police, and then the police would come in, they'd look at the day planner and say, Julie, there's no Post-it note here. We don't know what you're talking about. Maybe Julie had a good reason to believe that Mark Jensen was doing things to make her either look crazy or be crazy, correct?
I suppose in a hypothetical scenario, yes, that is possible.
And hypothetically, I mean, you've heard the movie Gaslight, right? I mean, if you're a forensic psychiatrist, you must have seen the movie Gaslight.
I have not.
Really? I highly recommend it to you. But let's assume hypothetically that Gaslight was about a husband who wanted to drive his wife crazy. So he was doing things around the house to make her think things were happening that were not actually happening. He was doing them. That's called gaslighting, right?
I'm familiar with that term, yes.
Yes. And so if for 7 years, Mark Jensen was gaslighting Julie Jensen, trying to make her believe that Puerto Rico was making all these hang-up phone calls and leaving these penis
He's
photos
still
around the house.
speculating.
If Julia comes to suspect that was the case, then she would have a further reason to believe that Mark Jensen might be trying to make her crazy or make her look crazy, right?
If there's enough evidence to suggest that Mr. Jensen was doing those things, yes, I think gaslighting is a particular form of challenging someone's mental status.
So if in fact that was happening, then once again, to get back to Julie Jensen's alleged distorted perception of reality, her perception of regard wouldn't be distorted, would it? She'd actually have good reason to believe that her husband might be trying to make her look crazy, wouldn't she?
Could you repeat the question?
If in fact Mark Jensen had engaged in a years-long campaign of harassment and demeaning of Julie Jensen, it caused her to try to make her believe that it was Terry Tarica that was doing that. If in fact he'd done that, and then also she'd been told that by the police that it was Mark Jensen that was doing it, then on December 3rd, 1998, December 2nd, 1998, and December 1st, 1998, the last days of her life, Julie Jensen would have pretty good reason to believe that her husband might be trying to make her look crazy or might be trying to kill her, right?
What's your question?
So I'm hearing multiple hypotheticals.
Well, let's start with one. Hypothetically, let's assume that Julie Jensen had reason to believe that Mark Jensen was the one who'd been gaslighting her for the preceding 7 years. Do you accept that there was information that Julie could reasonably infer that Mark Jensen was the one who was doing that? Do you accept that proposition?
I don't know who did it.
I know, but if Julie Jensen had been told by police officers and a private investigator that it wasn't Perry Tarika, that it was her husband, would she have reason to suspect that Mark Jensen was the person who was doing it, correct?
Yes, I think she had reason to suspect.
And so she'd also have reason to suspect that either he might be trying to kill her or he might be trying to make it look like he's doing that so that he induce her to take some drastic step that then he could use against her and take her children away. She might have reason to suspect that, right?
Based on what?
Based on the fact that she found a Post-it note on his day planner with this list of things on it. Well, did you see that list of things? I mean, it included aspirin and Nicotrol and Librium and razor blades and bag hands, a variety of just notes that didn't make a lot of sense to the police at the time. So if she saw that note and she photographed it and then later the note was gone, it was missing, might she have reason to believe that Mark Jensen was just trying to set her up?
I think that would be a logical leap that I would not make.
Well, are you aware that Mark Jensen had specifically told Julie that if she ever divorced him, he'd take the kids? Were you aware of that?
Not specifically, but that seems like a comment that's pretty prevalent in divorce scenarios.
So, and you are aware that according to everybody who saw Julie, whether it's Paul DeFazio or
that's pretty much
Dr.
it right
Borman
there.
or Teresa DeFazio or all of the neighbors, everybody said that Julie's boys were everything to her, right?
Yes.
So taking away her boys the threat of taking away her boys would be terrifying to Julie, wouldn't it?
Yes, but for people with good ego strength, divorce happens and people co-parent. So I don't think that is, while a threat, I don't think it is tantamount to something that is out of the ordinary in terms of couples who get divorced.
For persons, you think Julie had, do you have any reason to believe that Julie had good ego strength at the time that Mark Jensen was engaging this pattern of behavior against her?
I think that she suffered significantly with symptoms of depression.
Well, I know, and it seems like it's kind of a circular reasoning here to me, and correct me if I'm wrong. You diagnosed major depressive disorder because her perception of reality was distorted, and yet there's pretty clear evidence that her perception of reality was not distorted, that she saw what was going on around her and she was concerned and terrified by it.
Again, I will recharacterize the diagnosis of major depression based on the criteria, SIG ECAPS, that we discussed. I think one of the byproducts of her major depressive disorder was difficulty perceiving reality.
So we'll go back to SIG ECAPS again, sleep. The only person who talked about Julie having any sleep problems was Mark Jensen, isn't that true?
Yes, he was attempting to get a medication to alleviate her difficulty with sleep.
Oh, or he was getting a medication to cause her to sleep so she'd sleep through the symptoms of his poisoning of her. That's another option, right?
I suppose that would be an option.
Yeah, but you didn't express that option. You expressed the option that he was concerned about her well-being.
Again, I offer opinions with reasonable medical certainty, which is more likely than not. More likely than not, it is my opinion that he called for sleep medications in a woman who had been to see the doctor the day before and was diagnosed as being depressed.
But the day before, Dr. Borman had not made any notes whatever of any sleep problems, correct?
Yes.
And do you suppose that when Dr. Borman gave that prescription to Mark Jensen, he said, now, as soon as you get home, give her a dose of Ambien. And then tonight, give her another dose of Ambien. And then first thing in the morning, give her another dose of Ambien. Do you suppose that's the way that Dr. Borman suggested that Mark Jensen should handle this Ambien?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You prescribe Ambien, don't you?
Speculating.
Typically not.
You don't prescribe Ambien?
Not
Why
generally, no.
Why not?
It's a controlled substance.
And you don't like giving people Ambien?
I tend not to prescribe it because I think there are more appropriate options for sleep.
So, and it's a controlled substance and it can have untoward consequences, correct?
It is psychoactive. That's the reason that it's a controlled substance.
But if you were to prescribe it to well, first of all, would you give a prescription to a husband who was coming in on behalf of his wife? Or would you expect to talk to the wife first?
I think we practice a bit differently now. I would ensure that I had a release of information prior to communicating with any family member who was calling directly about a patient.
And if a family member was calling about, for example, a husband came in to see the doctor about his wife,
Oh, geez.
would you prescribe Ambien to your patient, the wife, just based upon the representations that the husband made?
She is
I wouldn't
hindering
prescribe
him
Ambien
so much.
at all based on my own personal practice.
Well, would you prescribe any prescribed medication at all, to give any prescribed medication at all for a patient, just based on what the husband said without first talking to the patient?
If that individual was their guardian, I would, yes, because they would be the one to provide consent.
If the man was the guardian, well, was Mark Jensen Julie Jensen's guardian on December 2nd, 1998?
Not to my knowledge.
So Julie was not in need of a guardian on December 2nd, 1998, was she? So I'll just ask this hypothetical question one more time. If a man came into your practice the day after you just seen his wife and asked for some prescribed medication for her, would you prescribe that medication for her just based on the man's representation without first talking to the wife?
In 2023, I would not. I was not practicing in 1998.
But you're happy to diagnose her based upon Mr. Jensen's representations to you?
No.
No.
So you base your diagnosis not just on what Mark Jensen said, or even not on what Mark Jensen said at all, correct?
I base my diagnosis on other sources.
Such as Ted Voigt?
Yes, the information that he provided did weigh into my opinion about her suicide risk. I don't believe I specifically used information from Ted Voigt regarding diagnostic criteria.
Yes.
What information did you rely upon for diagnostic criteria?
Namely, Dr. Borman's information, as he is the medical provider that saw her most proximal to the time of her death.
So Dr. Borman is principally the reason that you've come to this conclusion that Julie suffered from major depressive disorder?
Yes.
And yet you didn't even properly or accurately consider Dr. Borman's testimony, did you? Because on the sleep thing, you indicated that it came from Dr. Borman. It didn't come, or Julie Jensen. It didn't come from either one of them. It came from Mark Jensen, and only Mark Jensen. Isn't that true?
No.
Where else did it come from?
Objection.
Dr. Borman.
Dr. Borman's notes indicate, Dr. Borman indicated that Julie Jensen had said that she suffered from a sleep disorder.
Dr. Borman indicated in his notes that she had a sleep disorder for which he prescribed medications.
No, he did not say that. He did not, he indicated, actually, that's absolutely inconsistent with what Dr. Borman just testified to in this courtroom. What he said in this courtroom was that
Objection.
he did not make note of any sleep problems at all with Julie Jensen on December 1st we saw her.
I'm not talking about this.
Didn't say anything about December 1st. He wouldn't have prescribed her something to take if she didn't have problem with sleep. Doesn't matter if who told him. All that matters is that's what she took. Don't be stupid and lame. Prosecutor, you little glowy red person with beady eyes. And you can tell right there, he looks like he's about to snap that tongue out and like catch her right across the face. Stop telling me things I don't want to hear, with a little froggy toad tongue. No offense, Cool Frog. Just this guy has like I can see that he's not a good person. He's very angry. He needs to lose the anger. He needs to find a place of zen and peace.
December 1st.
You're talking December 2nd.
Yes, he
December-
indicated that she had sleep problems for which he prescribed the medication.
But that information came exclusively from Mark Jensen, correct?
Yes, but he documented in his notes, suggesting
Oh.
that he accepted and believed it.
So because Dr. Borman wrote down in his notes that Julie Jensen had a sleep problem, that's something you can rely upon, even though all of the information came from the accused murderer in this case.
I assume that Dr. Borman used the information that Mr. Jensen provided in combination with his interview from her the day prior, in which he thought she was depressed, and as trouble with sleeping is one of the symptoms of depression, it made sense to him that she would have a sleep disorder, to the point where he actually prescribed a medication to treat that sleeping disorder.
Doctor, you just made all that up, didn't you? You just made all that stuff up. Dr. Borman didn't testify about that.
Objection, argument.
Sustained. Ask you to do.
Objection. He did absolutely testify to that. That is exactly what he testified to. Jesus Christ, you little lame bastard. He said that, yes, she was acting depressed. He even notated it. So it would not be out of the norm for him to prescribe medication because she's not sleeping. Objection, skull punt. Yes.
Different way.
Well, you know, Dr. West, Dr. Borman testified in this courtroom. The jury heard him testify. He never said anything about Julie having any sleep problems on December 1st. Now, will you acknowledge that there's nothing in Dr. Borman's notes reflecting that Julie Jensen told him anything about any sleep problems on December 1st?
Yes.
Okay. So then on December 2nd, the only information that Dr. Borman had about sleep problems came from Mark Jensen. You will acknowledge that, correct?
No.
There you go.
Well, what other information did Dr. Borman have at the time that Mark Jensen came in and indicated that Julie was having trouble sleeping? What other information did Dr. Borman have that Julie Jensen was having trouble sleeping besides what Mark Jensen told him?
Dr. Borman had seen her the day prior. He had felt that she was depressed. Sleep being an issue in depression would have been consistent with Mr. Jensen's report that she wasn't sleeping. So I would offer to you that he relied on his medical knowledge and skill set in order to combine the information from his evaluation of her on the 1st and a piece of information that Mark Jensen gave him on the 2nd to offer a prescription medication to treat a symptom that would have been consistent with major depressive disorder.
Now, doctor, you indicated that defense counsel asked you on direct how much she asked you if you're getting paid. And you said yes. How much have you been paid so far, and how much are you intending to bill for the rest of your participation in this case?
Oh, because he's got nothing left. She took the wind out of his sails, and he is so mad. So, how much you being paid to lie on the stand? That's what he's trying to imply.
I believe the initial bill from 2017 was approximately $10,000, which included travel time spent with Mr. Jensen, extensive record review of transcripts. And then regarding this matter, I have not submitted a bill yet.
How much are you charging per hour?
$400 an hour.
It's not bad.
And do you charge a flat rate for having to come here?
No.
So you didn't charge him for traveling to and from?
Mm,
Well, I'm talking the $400 an hour. Does it start the minute you get on the witness stand, or does it start the minute you got the hotel room? When did you start? How many hours are you going to bill him for today so far?
For today so far,
Yes.
I suppose I started at 8:30.
And how about yesterday? You're not billing him anything for yesterday?
That's a double negative. I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
I said you're not charging anything for yesterday. I don't think that's a double negative, is it? You didn't charge him anything for yesterday? I didn't say you didn't charge him nothing for yesterday. That would be a double negative. I asked you, you didn't charge him anything for yesterday?
I'm
That's not a double
frustrated
negative. But
already.
did you charge him anything for yesterday, or are you planning to charge him anything for
So
yesterday?
frustrated.
How much are you charging him for yesterday?
Nice. Good
I haven't
job on
calculated the
her.
hours yet.
Oh, she got him pissed.
Well, when did you start and when did you finish? I can do the calculation for you.
I would assume an hour and a half for travel and 2 hours for preparation for today.
So 3.5 hours yesterday, and then 2 hours, approximately 2 hours for today.
Is that a question?
Yes, that's a question.
Yes.
She's just, and the wife is probably just trying not to laugh because she's like, oh.
So you indicated that
she's
there
trying
was
so hard
suicidality
not to
was present here,
laugh.
correct?
Her husband just got like totally spanked on stand, and she's trying not to laugh. Oh.
Yes.
And Julie Jensen told a number of different people she would never commit suicide, correct, because of her boys?
My apologies. Let me rephrase that. I indicated that she was at high risk for suicide.
But the last S in city caps is suicidality, correct?
Yes, and I believe that I made the caveat that that is something that's up for debate. That's the question that we're looking at here.
So Julie Jensen did tell a number of different people that she would never commit suicide, correct?
Yes, I believe that to be true.
But nonetheless, you thought she was at high risk for suicide.
Yes.
But if she told people that she was considering suicide, you also consider her at risk for suicide.
Yes.
So if she said she's not suicidal, or she says she is suicidal, either way, she's suicidal.
Yes, given the other risk factors.
So really, there's nothing Julie could have said that would have caused you to come to any other diagnosis other than major depressive disorder in this case?
That she could have said?
Yes.
Yes, I imagine there are a number of things she could have said that would lead her to not appear depressed if she were not depressed.
Well, you know, psychiatrists and other people, and they use this term depressed. I mean, what about just being really, really sad? Can people be really sad because of the situation that they find themselves in?
Yes.
So, for example, if a person just got a diagnosis for terminal cancer, you'd expect them to be very sad and distraught, correct?
Yes.
That doesn't mean they've been depressed. It just means they've got terrible news and they're upset about it.
Correct.
And if somebody that you love or care about has died, then you expect them to be you expect them to be very sad about that, correct?
Potentially, I think everyone grieves in different ways.
And isn't that one of the things the DSM-5 says, is that when you're looking, before you come to describe that as major depressive disorder, you're supposed to look at the things that could cause the person to naturally be sad?
I think those are important to take into account.
Well, that's what the DSM-5 says, isn't it?
I don't know what part of the DSM-5 you're referring to. It's a large book.
Well, it shouldn't surprise you when I was talking about the part that pertains to major depressive disorder. So on page 161, note, responses to a significant loss, e.g. bereavement, financial ruin, losses from a natural disaster, a serious medical issue or disability, or for that matter, your marriage falling apart, may include the feelings of intense sadness, rumination about the loss, insomnia, poor appetite, and weight loss. So the DSM-5 also indicates to you that when you're making a diagnosis of major...
He just read off all the symptoms right there that she was talking about. God.
depressive disorder, you should look at what's actually going on in a patient's life. Isn't that true?
He just read off everything.
Yes, I think all those factors are important to take into account.
So let's consider the factors that were going on in Julie Jensen's life.
And he tried skipping over. It was like, fuck. It's not what I meant to say.
Say from September 21st, 1998 through December 1st, 1998. The first time she saw Dr. Borman, well, the first time we're talking about here, September 21st, 98. And the second time, when she saw him on September 21st, 98, let's talk about things that are going on in Julie Jensen's life. She had reason to suspect that her husband was having an affair, correct?
Yes.
In fact, her husband was having an affair, correct?
Yes.
And she had reason to believe that if she divorced her husband, he would take the kids, correct?
Yes, I believe that was one of her concerns.
And she was a stay-at-home mom, so she didn't have any independent source of income, correct?
That is correct. She was not working at the time.
And she had reason to believe that her husband had subjected her to a years-long campaign of emotional distress and gaslighting behaviors, correct?
I don't necessarily agree with that characterization.
Well,
good for her.
You don't agree that on September 21st, 1998, a rational person in Julie Jensen's shoes, you don't agree that she'd have a reason to believe that her husband may have been the person that was causing all these hang-up phone calls and these abusive emails?
No, I don't believe that has been determined who caused those.
Okay, let's
there you go.
assume hypothetically that in her long list of
Stop with
harassing
the
behaviors,
hypothetical
Julie Jensen had
shite.
noted on April 13th, 1998 email, she'd received an email as part of this pattern of
God.
abuse. Assume that hypothetically, will you please?
Okay.
And then assume hypothetically that we recovered that email and it was from Turtle to Julie Jensen. Can you assume that hypothetically?
Yes.
And then assume hypothetically that attached that email from Turtle to Julie Jensen was a whole bunch of penis photos, erect penis photos, a whole bunch of offensive pornographic penis photos. Can you assume that hypothetically?
This guy's got penis on the brain. Just saying. Something about those penis photos must have him worked up. I'll let that hang there. I know it sounds nuts, but this guy has a slight peen problem, I'm imagining.
No, I don't necessarily know those were harassing or offensive. I don't know how she interpreted that email.
Well, let's say this. If we show them to the jury, and we did in fact show them to the jury, and everybody would concede that they're abusive and offensive and pornographic photos, that wouldn't influence your judgment at this point?
I don't know that everyone conceded they're abusive and pornographic photos. I think sometimes people who are married to one another exchange images between them. I don't think that that's terribly unusual behavior. I do not know how Ms. Jensen personally interpreted that.
Well, she did list it in the harassing behavior. So wouldn't that suggest that she viewed it as harassing behavior?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Okay, so she's got a long list. She's got pages and pages and pages and pages of harassing behavior that she's kept in this journal. Will you accept that as a hypothetical proposition?
Was it titled harassing behavior?
Well, she's told by a police officer you should keep a record.
God. She just, was it titled harassing behavior?
Of all this harassing behavior. So then she started keeping the record. So now can you infer that, yes, this is harassing behavior that Julie Jensen was keeping track of?
It's my understanding they were unusual occurrences and circumstances that she kept track of.
And one of those occurrences was an email on April 13th, 1998. And she put it on her list, this list of harassing behaviors. So you're even now, you can't even accept the proposition that Julie Jensen viewed this email with all these penis photos on it. She viewed that as harassing behavior. You can't even accept that now?
Wait, you said she couldn't use a computer. Didn't you say that she was an incompetent woman? She couldn't use a computer. She was so computer illiterate that she couldn't even read an email. She didn't even have an email address. Isn't that correct?
I think it was an unusual circumstance. Again, I don't know how she responded to it emotionally.
We're going to take our morning break, folks. Good time to stop.
He is so pissed. It's a beautiful thing. I love watching little men like that just get completely destroyed. Because he's an angry, angry, angry little man. Oh. And he's about to get destroyed on cross whenever they come back here.
Back on the record on Mark Jensen, 2002 CF314. The appearances are the same. The doctor is still under oath. If she's on the stand, you can continue with your cross. Mr. Jamboys, the jury's back.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. West, I'm going to show you something that's been marked as State's Exhibit 34. Have you ever seen that before?
No.
Please open it up. And the first thing that's in there is a bunch of letters from Ameritech about harassing phone calls and tap-in traces and things of that sort, correct?
There are some letters from Wisconsin Bell, it appears.
And what do they pertain to?
I believe it looks like it refers to a trace on the phone.
Now, would you go to the first page of the actual this actual book, and then go down to the about 2/3 of the way down? There's a designation headed 4296. You see that? Where there's a reference to Detective Mickelson.
There are a number of items dated 4296, and I do see a reference to Police Detective Paula Mickelson.
Could you please read that out loud to the jury?
4296 AM called Kenosha Police Detective Paula Mickelson, 656-7328, and she suggested the following. 1, talk to a detective at Pleasant Prairie Police, not uniformed patrolman Mark Hunter or Paul Ratsberg, 694-7353. 2, keep a journal of everything that happens. We are accountable.
So that's where I want you to stop. So right there, Detective Mickelson apparently was advising Julie Jensen to keep a record of everything, correct?
Yes.
Now, would you please turn to page 46 of that journal?
Okay.
And what's the first entry on the top of page 46?
1998 new tactics, live on internet, calls to Mark's OFC office, asking if he's watching it and when to tune in.
Now, please go down to 41398. And what does it indicate there for 41398?
Email.
So Julie Jensen's indicating in this, will you now acknowledge that she was keeping a list of harassment that was being directed against her upon the instruction of Detective Paula Mickelson from the Kenosha Police Department?
I don't see the word harassment in here.
Okay. I guess what we'll do is pull up this. You got on your screen there? Pull up
There you go.
41398.
Just because you show the email doesn't mean that that's what she was referring to. Just says email. That's it.
What page is it?
Ambiguous.
Turn to page 33, please. And that's entitled, at the top of that, it's in box letters, it says partial review of past, correct?
Yes.
And go to page 34. And then what's listed on all these pages, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38.
He doesn't realize she's much better at this psychological stuff than he is.
40, 41, 42, 43, 45, 46. What's listed on each and every one of those pages is a series of actions that apparently were directed against Julie Jensen. Isn't that true?
No, I don't believe there's any indication that they were directed specifically against her.
Well, she's the one that was making the notes, correct?
Yes.
And she recorded hang-up phone calls, correct?
Yes, but I understand that to be a home phone.
Yes, a home phone, yes. And she was recording penis photos or photos being left around the house, correct? Or at Mark's place of business, correct?
I understand she did that, and I have not seen a specific reference to that, but I do believe that to be true.
And then when you go to page 36, I'm sorry, page 46. Page 46 at the top, she indicates a new tactic, correct?
Yes.
And then on April 13th, 98, she indicates email, correct?
Yes.
Now, from all of this, you can't surmise that Julie Jensen was the victim, the subject of a pattern of harassment and humiliation directed against her?
No. I can tell you right now what she's going to say. She's going to say, no, I don't see anywhere that she says it was directed towards her. She was just keeping a log of when things were coming in.
No, I don't see any reference to humiliation.
Okay.
Nice. Nice.
Now, I'm going to actually show you the email that Julie Jensen received on April 13th, 1998. So could you put it up on the screen, please? This has already been received in evidence. This email was shown to Julie Jensen on April 13th, 1998, according to her own notes.
Notice how he changed what he said? Don't say that she read it. She was shown it.
And can you read what it says?
Maybe. That's better. Here's a few for Jay of me soft. Also a shot I took without her knowing it of a married girl in the office I'm currently doing at a nearby hotel.
And that is from whom?
Turtle.
To whom?
Mark Jensen.
And the subject?
Me soft.
Now, I'm going to show you, and the jury, I'm going to show you the photos that were attached to this email.
Please don't. Don't show us. I know what a pain looks like. If you don't know what a pain looks like,
So,
well, that's
These are the
up to
photos
you.
that were apparently attached, well, that they were attached to this email that you just seen from Turtle to Mark Jensen. You can take the photos down now. So those are pornographic photos,
Yes, they depict naked men, it appears.
and it appears as though it came from Turtle to Mark Jensen, correct?
That is what it said.
So you could see why Julie Jensen would think that these are harassing emails being sent to Mark Jensen for him to show to her, right?
I don't know what she thought they were. There's no indication of that.
And I'm going to show you another email that appears to be from Turtle to Mark Jensen. So direct your attention to the screen. Can you see what that says? Can you pull it up?
This is
Well,
the same
now-
email
Yes, the same email, but now can you see who Turtle actually is?
from Turtle M. Jensen at execpc.com.
So M. Jensen at execpc.com. Do you have any professional opinion as to who that may be?
No, I don't have a professional opinion on who
Do
that
you have
is.
any opinion, any idea, any inference, any possible way, considering that we're here in the trial of state of Wisconsin versus Mark Jensen? Now, maybe can you think who could M. Jensen at execpc.com, who could that possibly be?
I don't know.
You wouldn't surmise it might be Mark Jensen? Might be Michael Jensen?
I don't know.
Matthew Jensen? But you couldn't exclude the possibility that since Mark Jensen's email address is mjensen at execpc.com, might you surmise that that is Mark Jensen?
Again, I don't know.
Well, if I
She
showed you an
doesn't need to.
email from Mark Jensen to Kelly Labonte that is from M. Jensen at execpc, might that give you further indication of who M. Jensen at execpc might be?
Perhaps, but
Okay,
I'm
well-
not a computer expert, so I don't understand how emails are generated or how emails are cloned. So I can't speak to that.
I'll just show you the email and see what inferences you can draw from that.
Please do, because
So again, directing your attention to the
she'll
screen.
say, I really don't care. And they should be just objecting to it because
So it's from Mark Jensen, mailed to mjensen at execpc.com, and then sent, and then it was to Labonte K at Stifle Nicholas.
okay,
So
I'm
does
not a
that
computer
maybe
expert.
cause you
That's
to
not what I got brought
possibly
here
consider
for.
the idea that M. Jensen at execpc.com is actually the one and only Mark Jensen?
Again, I don't know.
Okay, nothing further on this.
Good job on her part. That's how all people should be answering this bonehead.
We're done with the cross?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect?
Just one.
Just, all right, we heard that one question.
I have two questions.
All right, now we got two.
Can I hear
Is there-
three?
Dr. West, is there any information you reviewed that suggested that Julie Jensen believed her husband was the cause of the photos and hang-up calls and emails?
No.
And based on everything you've been asked, do you have an opinion as to Julie Jensen's risk for suicide?
I do. And based on all the information available that I reviewed, my opinion remains unchanged that at the time of her death, Ms. Jensen was at high risk for suicide.
No further questions.
Anything on that, Mr. D'Ambrose?
So you are aware that Julie Jensen had been told by two different police officers and a private investigator that Mark Jensen was the one leading these photos around the house and doing the hang-up calls. You are aware of that, correct?
I don't have any indication of that.
Oh, well, assuming hypothetically that Julie Jensen had been told by both Ron Cosman and Paul Ratzberg and a private investigator named Dave Ellis that it was Mark Jensen that was doing this to her, not Perry Tarica, would she then, in your estimation, have a reasonable basis for believing that Mark Jensen was engaging in this harassing behavior?
I don't see any evidence of that.
Even today, you don't see any evidence of that. Mine. No further questions.
All right, you're excused, thank you.
Of
course,
Exhibits
I-
121 and 122 into evidence.
They will be received.
Don't have to agree with
Who's our next
the
witness?
prosecutor.
David Jensen, and I want to see if he's in the hallway.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, another Jensen.
So help you God. All right, try to get as close as you can to the microphone.
That's supposed to be the.
Try to speak loudly.
One of
First
his
of all,
sons.
spell your first and last name for the reporter.
David Jensen,
Spell your first and last name.
David Jensen.
All right, who's doing the direct? Go ahead, Ms. Krause.
And David, I'm going to ask you to speak directly into the microphone so that the jurors can hear you, okay?
Sorry.
Okay. David, can you tell us who your parents are?
Mark Jensen and Julie Jensen.
And how old were you when Julie Jensen passed away?
I was 8 years old.
I want to take you to December 3rd, 1998, okay?
Oh, please
At
don't.
some point, did you arrive to your house from school?
What day? December 3rd was that? What day of the week?
The day your mom passed away, that Thursday.
Sorry. Yes, we came home directly from school. I was picked up.
And after coming home directly from school, where did you go?
We came inside, and Doug and I went to the living room.
And when you say we, who was with you?
My dad. It was my dad, my brother, Douglas, and I.
And after you and Douglas went into the living room, do you know where your dad went?
Yeah, he told us to wait in the living room while he went down the hallway to the bedroom to check on our mom.
At some point, did your dad come back down that hallway?
Yeah. I don't remember how long exactly it was, but he came out crying not terribly long after he went down.
So after he was in your parents' bedroom, he came back down that hallway?
Yes.
And what did you see?
He was sobbing and told us to stay there, told me to put on a movie for Doug, went to the telephone, and then returned down the hallway. We just stayed in the living room.
We're going to come back to that day, but I want to hear a little bit about what you've been doing since you were 8 years old, okay? Did you graduate high school?
Yes, from Bradford.
And that was in Kenosha?
Yes,
What year did you graduate high school?
2008.
After high school, did you go to college?
UW Parkside. I graduated in 2012.
And what did you graduate with for a degree?
Bachelor of Science in Biology.
After graduating from UW Parkside, did you continue your education?
Yes, I worked for a year as a lab technician and then enrolled as a graduate student at the Medical College of Wisconsin.
That 1 year you worked as a lab technician, where was that?
That was also at the Medical College of Wisconsin.
So after that year, you enrolled as a graduate student?
Yes.
And that was also at the Medical College of Wisconsin?
Yes.
And what were you working towards?
I was working on my PhD,
Your PhD in what?
physiology and biomedical science.
What does physiology and biomedical science mean?
So I was in particular working on vascular dysfunction and hypertension and diabetes with a focus on translational research from bringing basic research to the clinic. So,
At some point, did you get your doctorate?
yes, I graduated or defended my thesis in 2020.
When you say defended your thesis, that means like you had to give your thesis to a group of individuals and then defend the premise.
Yes, so I wrote all my original research was written up into like a 300-page monstrosity, and then I go in front of the entire department, give a big presentation, and then my committee decides whether my contribution has been enough to warrant the degree. And so, yeah, graduated.
Was it enough to warrant your degree?
Yes,
And when did you get that?
that was in 2020.
After getting your degree, did you then go and start
Wow.
working?
I defended my thesis. It was the initial week of COVID lockdown. It was mine was the first virtual defense at my institution. So due to hiring freezes and stuff, I worked as a postdoctoral fellow at the medical college for a couple years, and I'm now employed by a company called Ashfield as a medical writer.
And what does a medical writer do?
So we're hired by pharmaceutical companies. I write manuscripts, congress presentations, and educational materials based on the results of clinical trials.
And you've been doing that since 2022.
2022 January I started there.
Now, I want to go back to your childhood before you were 8 years old and ask you if you remember a time that you spent with your mom.
Any time in particular? Or?
Just any specific things you remember doing with your mom prior to her passing.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time at this little plastic table just off the kitchen. This was our arts and crafts table. We during the summer we were absolute fish. We were in the pool just constantly.
When you say we, who was in the pool constantly?
Doug and I, Doug with his little floaties, and Drake was over. Our cousin Drake was over often in the summers as well. So he and I were closer in age, so we would be swimming a ton.
Was your mom in the pool with you, if you remember?
I don't particularly remember her being in the pool with us. Just kind of watching us from the deck.
Absolutely. And you said your younger brother was in the pool.
Occasionally, as he was able.
What other things do you remember doing with your mom?
I mean, she also volunteered at my school. So whenever we had a field trip, she also came along. So always saw her there too.
Did your family do anything as a family?
Yeah, I mean, we would all four of us would play in the pool on the weekends, and we frequently went fishing as well on Lake Michigan or occasionally Lake Geneva.
Now, I want to talk to you about some of the activities you did with your dad prior to your mom passing. Do you remember specific things that you did with your dad?
Frequent fishing trips, sometimes all four of us, sometimes just the two of us. It was just him and me. A lot of just roughhousing and wrestling on the carpet.
When you mentioned fishing trips, sometimes just you and your dad, sometimes all four. Do you remember where you went?
Yeah. We would do an annual trip down to Big Cedar Lodge in Missouri. It was just a fishing resort on a chain of lakes. And more often, Lake Michigan, we would go just outside the harbor up by the lighthouse and the breakwater and go perch fishing there.
Being an avid fisherman, did you guys have your own poles?
Yes. Yeah.
And did you ever make your own poles?
My dad would buy like the blanks and then do the wrapping and building. So I'd help him with that out in the garage. We had one that we built for myself that I was particularly fond of.
The cops took it and I never got it back. Those bastards.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 123, 124, and 125 and ask you if you recognize these pictures.
Sorry, frog in my throat. Yes, I do recognize these. This is the base of the rod that we built for me.
How do you know it's the base of the rod that you built for you in 123?
In 120.
Oh, is that what exhibit you have in front of you, David?
123. It's painted Dave and Dad on it, and also I was very adamant. 6-year-old David was very adamant about including Power Ranger stickers, which I can also see in the picture.
And is there a picture of the handle of that fishing rod?
Just of the base of the rod.
And then did you and your dad make anyone else a fishing pole?
Yes, we also made one for my mom.
Before I go to the one that you made for your mom, I want to ask you a couple questions about these pictures. On exhibit 125, can you tell the date of the fishing pole?
It's marked May of 1996.
And is that when you remember making the fishing pole?
Um,
You said 6-year-old David wanted Power Rangers?
yeah, I was quite young at the time, but I remember picking out the stickers and trying to figure out which ones would actually fit on the rod and doing that out in the garage.
And exhibit 123 and 124 are just of the base of the fishing pole with the Power Ranger stickers?
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's marked Dave and Dad as well.
Now, I was just asking you if you had made a fishing pole for anyone else, and what was your answer?
We also made one specifically for my mom.
And what happened to that fishing pole? Oh, she destroyed it. She got angry and beat me with it.
I'm going to show you what's been been marked as exhibit 128 and ask you if you know what that is a picture of.
This looks like one of the rods that we built. Most of them had the cork handle.
Did yours have a cork handle?
No, mine had a metal and foam handle.
And what was so special about that handle to you, the metal and foam handle?
I picked it because it looked like a lightsaber.
Right. Would you be consistent with 6-year-old David?
Yes.
And so exhibit 128, you recognize that as a fishing pole consistent with what you had made in the past with your dad?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit 126. Are you able to tell from exhibit 126 on who that fishing pole was made for? Or is that just another picture of the pole?
No, this one is marked my 3Ds, which is what my mom called us collectively, Dad, David, and Douglas.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit 127. Is this a close-up of the kind of the base of the pole?
Yes.
And what does it say on there?
It's the my 3Ds and then Christmas '98.
I'm going to show you exhibit 129, which
Yes, it's the same pole, just a little more in focus, but yeah, yes, my 3Ds and then Christmas '98.
What if she purposely
consistent with the picture of
named
128 that
her
I showed
two
you?
children with a
Yes.
name? What would that be ironic or unironic?
And this was consistent with one of the pictures I showed you, exhibit 127.
Yes.
And on this picture, you can see the my 3Ds at the top,
Yes.
and then it says Christmas '98.
Yes.
And that's consistent with exhibit 129 that I showed you.
Yes.
David, why does it say Christmas '98 if you remember?
We were making it as a Christmas gift.
And how do you remember when you made this fishing pole?
Not exactly. It would have been sometime in the winter months. The garage was heated, but it still was chilly enough to need a jacket.
And do you remember it being chilly enough that you needed a jacket?
Yes.
And who did you make this fishing pole with for Christmas?
My dad and I.
Did Douglas help?
I don't recall him helping. He was very young at the time.
And did you help with any part of making this fishing pole?
As much as I could. As a kid, I think I was there more just to provide excitement.
Did your family have a home computer?
Yes, we had one in the den.
And do you remember when you got that home computer? I'm not asking the specific date or time, just like generally, do you remember getting it?
Yes, when we got it, we also bought a table to be the desk for it, which I took upon myself to try to assemble, and my parents unpacked the box and I came and found me doing the bolts in. I liked putting things together, so just thought it was a big Lego set, essentially.
And did you ever use that computer?
Yes, there was a painting program that I was particularly fond of that I remember playing with it on.
Do you remember anyone else using the home computer?
Intermittently in the evening, we'd occasionally hang out in the den. My parents taught me to play chess in there, and I'd occasionally see my dad and my mom using it on occasion, but nothing in particular stands out about it.
Do you specifically remember seeing your dad on the computer?
Yes.
And do you specifically remember seeing your mom on the computer?
Yes.
And you said when was that you would typically see them?
In the evenings is when I remember seeing them at.
Can you tell us what they were doing on the computer?
I couldn't tell you specifics.
At the time, at any time during your childhood, do you remember your mom being upset or exhibiting any unusual behavior?
I mean, upset a few times, but I mean, once I went to the neighbor, asked to go out and play, and went to the neighbors across the street and the neighbors next door, and parents couldn't find me, so they were understandably upset.
Absolutely.
But there was one instance where she did get upset that I didn't. It stuck with me because I didn't understand why she was upset or what we'd done wrong.
What was that?
One summer, we were watching my cousin Drake during the day that summer, and I don't recall how we exactly got onto this, but we were playing with Hot Wheels tracks and taking them apart and sticking them in the waistbands of our pants, and I remember her just screaming at us in the bathroom and washing our mouth that was soap and putting us in a timeout. I didn't understand why what we'd done wrong to warrant that reaction.
To be fair, though, that wasn't like a typical memory of yours that you're always getting yelled at or grounded.
Oh, no.
This is just one instance that you remember.
Yes.
And I think you said you remembered it because it just kind of stands out at you because you didn't understand why you got in trouble.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there any other time that you remember your mom being upset and maybe you didn't understand why?
That was the big one that stood out to me.
That you remember?
Yeah.
Do you ever remember a time where Drake would have rubbed feces on the wall?
I'm objecting to leading.
Sustained.
Do you
It's a pretty leading question.
Do you have any memory of you and Drake spreading anything on the wall?
I'm objecting again. This is still leading.
We'll allow that one.
No, I don't remember ever spreading things on the wall.
I want to talk to you a little bit about just like day-to-day things in your household. Who did the cooking?
My mom did most of the cooking.
And how do you remember that?
I just occasionally, vague memories of her cooking. I remember my dad would grill. I'd help him with that sometimes. But yeah, my mom did most of the cooking, and in one instance when she cut herself with a kitchen knife, just stood up to me. So, but yeah, she was the primary cook, I think.
You had an uncle who lived not too far away, I think Paul Griffin.
Yes. He was also in Kenosha, so not too far away.
Do you remember spending time with him?
Not very often. I remember we would there was one birthday party that we went to during the summer months over there. But we would they had they had two adopted kids, and my cousin Kim was close in age enough to me that just wanted to get together and play with her more, but didn't really get the opportunity. We tried to see them at Christmas, but we didn't actually get together all that often.
What was it specifically about Christmas that you remember?
Well, we would call them drive-by Christmases, because we would try to get together and nothing would materialize, and eventually we just drive by their house and leave their presents on the front porch.
I want to take you back to December of 1998. And I want to specifically talk to you about December 2nd, which would have been the Wednesday before your mom passed away, okay? Do you remember how your mom was feeling that day?
She wasn't feeling well. She was in bed.
And do you remember, you say she's not feeling well. Why did you think she wasn't feeling well?
I don't remember any specific symptoms on that day or anything. It was just she was in bed, which was unusual, and mom and dad told us she was sick. So,
do you remember if your mom gave you a note to give to Teresa DeFazio?
No, I don't remember she gave me a note.
Do you remember if you called Eric Shore that day to ask to go to his house?
No, I don't remember that.
Do you remember talking or going to his house after school?
Not on that, not any specific date, but I do remember hanging out with him. We'd play The Sims and poke around on the piano. Yeah, he was like my best friend growing up, so we hung out frequently.
You hung out frequently, but what you're saying is you don't specifically remember that day.
Yes, I don't remember any. Those are just collective memories with him. I don't remember that specific day.
When you got home on that specific day, do you remember seeing your mom?
Yes, she was in bed, and I wanted to make her mac and cheese since that's what I got when I wasn't feeling well. So I remember bringing her that and some water. But
you said you wanted to make her mac and cheese. Do you remember helping make the mac and cheese?
Not specifically making it. I remember that I had to be the one to probably carry the bowl into the bedroom, but not specifically making it.
And I think you said that you also took her some water.
Oh, yes.
When you were in the bedroom, or when you took this into the bedroom with your mom, do you remember talking to her?
No particular conversation, but she was up and interacting with us, and
you remember talking, but not specifically what was said.
I couldn't quote, but just generally oh, thank you for the food, and telling her we loved her, and her responding to that.
Do you remember your mom volunteering in the classroom on Wednesdays with Miss DeFazio?
Yes, I remember. I remember seeing her in the classroom, but most of my specific memories are whenever there'd be a field trip. Those stand out a little bit more.
You remember your mom coming on field trips?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you remember any conversation with Miss DeFazio about your mom on December 2nd?
No, I don't remember talking to her about my mom.
I want to go back then to that, or go forward a day to that December 3rd day, the day your mom passed away. Did you see your mom that morning?
Yes, we went to go say goodbye to her before we left for school.
And where was she?
She was in bed.
And was she still sick?
Yes, her breathing was raspy that morning, but she still, gave us a hug, told us she loved us, and before we left.
You just said that her breathing was raspy. Was that different than what you had seen or heard on the night before December 2nd?
Yes, I don't remember her having the same breathing on the day prior.
So on December 3rd, you talked to your mom?
Yes, before we left for school. The only specific exchange that I remember in detail is just I love you, and then her responding I love you too.
Was she moving?
She didn't get out of bed, but she was. She turned to look at us. She gave us a hug. So she was moving around at least that much.
That morning, did you catch the school bus?
I usually took the bus. So I don't recall that. I don't remember specifically that morning. It was just kind of part of my routine, so it doesn't really stand out.
Prior to leaving the house, did you have any conversation with your dad about how your mom was doing?
Yes, we talked about how we were going to come straight home after school. He was going to pick me up. We'll pick both of us up. And if she wasn't feeling better, we're going to take her straight to the doctor.
And that was prior to leaving for school?
Yes.
That day when in school, do you remember having any specific conversation with Eric Shore about your mom?
I don't remember. I'm sure I would have spoken to him, but I don't remember any specific conversation.
Do you remember specifically what you said to him about the conversation you had with your dad?
I don't remember exactly what I would have said to him.
At some point, you did come home from school. I think you testified to earlier.
Yes.
And what you just said was that your dad said that he was going to pick you and your brother up and then go home.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Yes, we got home, and we wanted to go see her obviously, but he told us to wait in the living room so he could go check if she was asleep, or didn't want two kids just jumping on her.
And did you stay in the living room then?
Yes, we did.
And I think you.
That was the night I did.
And at some point, your dad came back out of the bedroom.
Yes.
And it was at that point that you saw him crying.
Yes.
After your dad came down the hallway, what did he say to you?
He told us to stay on the couch and asked me to put on a movie for Doug.
And did you do that?
Yes.
Where did your dad go?
He went towards the kitchen where I heard him talking on the telephone.
After your dad was finished talking on the telephone, where did he go then?
He went back to the bedroom.
At some point, did police officers show up at your house?
Yes. police officers. There's an ambulance outside too. There was one officer in particular that kind of hung out with Doug and I and showed us her baton and just kind of keeping us entertained and distracted.
When you were in with the officer who kept you distracted, do you know where your dad was?
We were in the living room and the foyer, but I don't remember him. I don't remember him being there with us. I think he was still down in the bedroom, but we never went down to the bedroom. So
At some point, did you leave your home?
yes, we went and spent the night at my Laura's house.
Did you see your dad the next day?
Yeah, yes,
when-
he came and saw us the next morning.
And what did he tell you at that point?
Um,
Or
Rough.
whatever you remember from that.
It's got to be rough. Man.
he sat us down on his lap and told us she passed. I kind of already knew at that point, and I don't remember what specifically he said to me. I was kind of just numb, and he may as well have been talking to the wall. I was kind of just in a daze.
Did anyone else talk to you that day?
Yes, I remember my aunt and my grandparents both sitting down with us individually too, but it was kind of the same reaction. I was kind of just numb. I spent the entire time feeling guilty that I wasn't crying. But
Did you go to your mom's visitation?
yes, my dad, Doug, and I had we arrived first at the funeral home before anybody else was there, and we had a private time with her.
So you and your dad and Doug spent time alone with your mom without anyone else?
Yes.
David, when you saw your dad coming down that hallway sobbing or crying, had you ever seen him that way before?
That was the first time I'd seen him cry.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Who's doing the cross? Go ahead, Ms. McNeil.
So David, I'm going to show you, Madam Clerk, what number are we on for exhibits? What's the next number? Yeah, so what would that number be? So these will be on State's Exhibit 130.
She is not going to do well in this. They need to not do this. Be very minimal with the questions.
And if we could just have the computer switched over to this one. So David, do you recognize who's in that picture?
Yes, that's myself, my mom, and
Little
Douglas.
And then in this picture, do you recognize who's in it?
Yes, that's also my mom with me, and then Doug in the back seat.
And then the third one, do you recognize what this is?
Yeah, my 3Ds, Dad, David, and Doug, our custom license plate.
So you knew that was your mom's license plate?
Yeah, and I can remember that red car that was attached to it as well.
Now, do you have pictures of you and your mother?
I do, yes.
And did she often take pictures with you and Douglas?
Yeah, we took pictures frequently.
And you know, not just from the license plate, but you know that you and Douglas, you were everything to your mother, right?
Yes.
Now, after your mom's death, you grew up with your dad, right?
Yes.
And you lived with him in the same household until you were about 17, right?
In the same household. So we moved.
Do
a few
not need
times.
to go down
So I mean,
this.
but when you grew up, you were in a home with
This is
your
not
dad
going to be
yes.
good.
until you were at least 17.
Yes.
And during that time, after your mom's death, your dad started dating Kelly Levante.
At some point, I don't remember exactly when.
And you don't know when he actually started dating her, right?
No.
But you know that Kelly Levante started coming to your house, right?
The only time I specifically remember her in there's only one time I specifically remember her at the house on Lakeshore Drive.
The Pleasant Prairie house.
Yes.
And do you remember her being at your birthday party that January 1999?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember much about that party.
And then the months after, you don't remember much about Kelly Levante being at your house?
No, I don't.
But then you moved to a house in Kenosha?
Yes, on the north side. I remember her being there.
Okay. And that's where Kelly Levante moved into the home?
Yes.
And I've been calling her Kelly Levante, but she was Kelly Jensen to you, right?
Yes, and yes, eventually starting calling her mom.
She married your father, correct?
Correct. Yes, sorry.
And so she changes her last name, so she's Kelly Jensen.
Yes.
And so basically, as soon as you moved into that house in Kenosha, until the time you were at least 17, you were living with your dad and with Kelly Jensen.
Yes.
And Douglas, of course, too.
Yes.
Now, Douglas, he's 5 years younger than you?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so you were born in January of 1990.
And he was born in March of '95.
Man, this is
Now,
rough.
after your mother died, were you able to talk about her with people in your family?
Yes, I remember talking with my grandparents about her, reminiscing, but
And you've talked about some memories. Can you tell us what is your best memory with your mother?
best memory. Eagle Tower up in Door County. We had family, extended family in Door County and Sister Bay, so we would vacation up there pretty frequently to go cross country skiing in the winter or biking in the fall. And at Peninsula State Park, there's an old Firewatch tower, and just climbing that with her and looking out over the bay. I loved it up there with her.
So
And so
rough.
your mom was really active.
Yes.
And you saw the picture with the bike. She would bike with you.
Yes.
Looks like the father was taking
I'm going to ask
pictures.
you some questions about this very difficult time period when your mom passed away. But before we get to that, I want to ask you about the computer. Do you remember like the time of
That's
year
a
when you
bad
got that
idea.
computer that ended up in the den of your house?
I don't remember exactly when.
And you said you saw your mom on the computer?
Yes.
And do you have any idea what she was doing on the computer?
I don't.
So your mom actually wasn't very good with computers at all, right?
I couldn't say one way or the other.
So do you remember joking with your teacher, Ms. DeFazio, about how your mom really didn't know anything about computers?
I don't remember that.
And you had some interest in computers, right?
Yes, I like playing on it.
So it was something that you would play on?
Yes.
And so did you joke with Ms. DeFazio that you had to show your mom what to do on the computer because you actually knew more than her?
No, I don't remember that.
And did you say anything to Ms. DeFazio about trying to teach your mom how to do things on the computer?
No, I don't remember that.
Okay, and so, for a lot of these questions, you might not remember, and then for some questions you might not know. So if you don't remember, just say I don't remember, and then if you don't know, say I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm just saying you that so I don't have to ask it after every single one.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't have to say, well, do you not remember or you don't know?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I want to talk to you about the morning of December 2nd. So that would have been the day before your mother died. So that morning, your mom was supposed to go to Ms. DeFazio's class, right?
Yeah, I guess if it was a Wednesday, then yes.
Now, you say you don't remember giving Ms. DeFazio a note,
I don't.
but your mom was sick that morning, right?
Yes.
And Ms. DeFazio asked you about your mom being sick, right?
I don't know. I don't remember.
And you told Ms. DeFazio that your mom was coughing really bad, right?
Well, I don't remember her coughing until the next day, but I don't remember or don't know about that conversation with Mr. Fazio.
Okay, so you're not saying it didn't happen, you're saying you don't remember.
Correct. I have no recollection of it.
Now, that day, also, you ended up going to your friend Eric Shore's house after school?
On that Wednesday. I don't remember specifically on that day.
Okay, so again, it's not it didn't happen, it's I don't remember.
Correct.
And so if Ms. DeFazio says she got a note, and in that note it also said you were going to Eric's house after school, you just don't remember that?
Yeah, I correct. I have no recollection of it.
Now, you told your friend Eric Shore that your mom was really sick too, right?
I don't remember the specific conversation with him, but I'm sure I would have talked to him about it.
And in fact, when you told your friend this, you demonstrated to him how your mom was breathing. Do you remember doing that?
I don't remember doing that.
That is like deep and raspy breaths. Do you remember demonstrating that for your friend Eric Shore?
I remember witnessing the breathing on her, but I don't remember demonstrating it.
Good.
Now, again, a lot of these questions you're not going to remember. And actually, you've never
Then don't
testified
ask.
before in this case at all?
No, but this is my first time.
Okay, so you might have heard a lot of other people testified around 2008, but you didn't.
I did not know.
And you know your friend Eric Shore, he's actually testified now 3 times in connection with this case,
Okay. I knew he had testified. I didn't know how many times.
including years ago when these events would have been closer in time.
I was aware he testified during the original.
So like in 2007 and then 2008, is
Yeah.
that what you're referring to?
Yes. Yeah, I was aware that he testified then.
So for you, it's tougher because you didn't testify in those times.
I know it's asked. I don't have any written record or anything of it.
Now, in terms of that day, December 2nd, again, you don't remember this, but you had that note to go to Eric Shore's house. And then after that, that was a Wednesday. Do you remember having karate on Wednesdays?
Yes, I remember having the karate class.
Now, do you actually have any memory of going to karate the day before your mom died?
Not of that week, no.
Okay. So if it was according to your normal schedule, you would have had that, but you just don't know if you went or not.
I don't remember, no.
But you do remember coming home and trying to help your mom by giving her mac and cheese?
Yes.
And your mom was in bed in the morning, right? That morning of December 2nd?
Yes.
And that wasn't usual for your mom, right?
Yeah, yes, usually she'd be up and helping us get ready for school.
Right.
So her still being in bed wasn't usual.
And then when you came home that night, your mom was still in bed, right?
Yes.
And do you remember trying to be extra quiet that night so your mom could rest?
I don't remember that specifically, but it would make sense.
And so I think you told us that what you remember about that night is just kind of hanging out with her in the bedroom.
I remember bringing the food to her. I don't remember if we spent an extended period of time, like watching TV or something in there. I don't remember that.
Do you have any idea during this time period what your bedtime was?
Oh, I remember it being 8:30 at one point because I would get upset during the summer because it would still be light outside.
Yes,
And I didn't
it
want
is.
there was sunlight to play. I don't remember what it specifically was like during the school year for this particular time frame.
Yes.
So do you think you would have been asleep on a school night around 9:30, 10?
That sounds reasonable, but I can't remember specifically.
Okay. But fair to say, whenever you went to sleep, you certainly wouldn't know what was happening after that in your house.
No.
So now I want to take you to the morning of December 3rd. That morning, when you woke up that morning and you saw your mom, she was still in bed, right?
Yes.
And that morning when she was in bed, she was breathing really badly.
Yes, it was labored and raspy.
And in fact, that morning you were really worried about your mom, weren't you?
Yes, it was clear that she wasn't getting better.
You didn't want to go to school.
Didn't want to go to school. I don't remember if I specifically didn't want to go to school. I just remember being worried about her.
And you wanted your dad to take your mom to the hospital, right?
So we talked about how, just, when you're sick, you rest, and if you're not getting better, then we go see the doctor. So the discussion was that if she wasn't feeling better when we got home, we'd take her to the hospital.
Okay, so in the months after your mom died, a detective ended up talking to you at the police station. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And when you talked to the detective about it, you told the detective that you asked your dad that morning if your mom needed to go to the hospital.
I don't remember any of the specific questions. I remember getting picked up from school and going to the police station and the interrogation room, which was full of Burger King bags. But I don't remember any of the specific discussions while I was there. So I couldn't say.
Okay. So again, you didn't say this. You're just saying you don't remember.
Correct. Yeah, I don't remember any specific discussion or questions during when I was there.
Okay. So you don't remember saying that, asking your dad if your mother needed to go to the hospital.
I don't.
And you don't remember your dad saying no.
I don't.
And you do remember, though, that your dad promised you that when you got home on the 3rd, if your mom wasn't better, that you would take her to the hospital, or he would.
Yes, we were going to come straight home from school and check on her.
Doesn't sound like a bad statement there, but
Now,
prosecution
the morning
needs
of
to lay
December
off this
3rd,
guy.
you never saw your mother get out of bed, right?
No, I didn't.
And in fact, that morning, your mom couldn't even speak, right?
No, I remember telling her. I remember her telling us she loved us. So I think she was able to speak.
Didn't you tell your father, or remind your father in April of 1999 that your mom couldn't talk that morning?
I don't remember that.
I mean, you were so worried about her, you wanted her to go to the doctor, right?
Yes.
And your dad said no.
I don't remember. I don't remember a specific no. It was just we were going to take her home or take her after school. She wasn't feeling better.
Now, did you tell your friend Eric Shore that you wanted your mom to go to the hospital?
I don't remember the specific conversation with him that day. So I don't remember.
Did you tell Eric Shore that even though you wanted your mom to go to the hospital, your dad said no?
I don't remember.
I mean, there's always the possibility that she didn't want to go to the hospital and would have said no.
Now, the afternoon of December 3rd, do you remember on Thursdays in that school year that you had a French club?
Oh. Yes, I do. I haven't thought about that in a very long time. Yes, I do. Yes, I remember I was part of that.
And you would agree you weren't at home for an hour or anything like that before the police and the ambulance got there, right?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
So when you got home on December 3rd, it was pretty quick that the police and the ambulance got there, right?
Yeah, I couldn't give you an exact time, but yes, I don't remember. I think it wasn't that long. It was pretty shortly after we got home.
So if we know that the police and the ambulance got there around 4:30 that afternoon, then you wouldn't have been home since like 3:30 or anything like that, right?
No, I don't think so.
Because actually, when you got home that day, you wanted to run your mom, right?
Yes,
And
I'm gonna check on her.
Because if she wasn't better, she was going to go to the hospital.
Yes.
But your dad wouldn't let you run your mom, right?
No, he told us to wait in the living room so he could check on her.
And did he actually tell you to take Douglas and take the dog out for a walk?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Do you remember ever saying that to your teacher, Ms. DeFazio, once you got back to school?
I don't.
Get off of it, prosecutor. Don't let your ego get the best of you.
So when you left for school on December 3rd that morning, you were afraid for your mom, right?
I was worried about her.
And you thought she should go to the hospital?
Yes, just that was kind of my young David's frame understanding of it was, when you're sick, you rest until you get better. If you don't get better, you go to the doctor.
Now, I have a few other questions about afterwards, and then growing up in your dad's household. Your dad was pretty good with computers, right?
This is not going to be good.
I'd say so. I mean, yes, he was proficient with them.
And would he tend to be more of a night owl on the computer?
Yeah, yes. I got that from him too. A bit of a night owl.
And your dad actually built a computer, right?
Oh, I don't remember that.
You don't recall that?
I don't know.
But you recall him being very good with computers?
I remember him using them frequently. When he started his construction business, he designed his own logo and did all that by himself on the computer. So, yeah.
Now, do you remember a time period after your mom's death when you no longer saw her side of the family?
I mean, we didn't see them frequently beforehand, but it really fell off after she passed. We tried for a few Christmases after to try to get together with them, but I didn't see them very often.
And before that, you'd see him for birthday parties.
The one birthday party I remember kind of stands out because it was an outlier. I don't remember seeing them very often.
Oh, come
You
on.
remember your cousin Kim?
Yes,
And she was around your age?
a little bit younger.
Ah, come on. Get with it, prosecution.
Do you have like any
And-
keepsakes from your mom?
This
I have a lot of the
Line
photographs.
of questioning.
Those are the main thing that I'll go through occasionally.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right, are we going to
Yeah.
redirect?
Not from us. Thank you, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you. You're excused. Thank you.
Oh, jeez. Thank God. Prosecution. Horrible. Shouldn't
When we
have been
come back
asking
after
these
lunch,
questions.
does the defense have another
Well,
witness?
the father is
I think we
just
have to talk, but maybe not.
All right,
And Judge, can I move in the exhibits?
All right,
that
move
we
'em
have?
in.
123, 124, 125, 126,
God.
127, 129. I don't see 128.
And so I would move that in.
we'll talk about the case. Hey, minutes,
Final conversation so the court can have the colloquy.
so we're ready to do a colloquy when we come back after lunch?
That's our hope. We just
Thank
need
you.
a few minutes with him and we're trying to figure out how we can get that.
Okay, thank you.
all right. So lunchtime. Man, I love going through this stuff where I don't have to sit here and watch the whole damn screen just
Defenses
waiting.
are all the same. Voluntarily?
I am.
You want to add
As much as I like to talk about random bullshit, I'm so glad that I don't have to do that for like an hour by myself. Hats off and kudos to those at LawTube that do that, because they've got some seriously good patience. Me, I would go off on some random ass stuff, and during the day, my mind is so scatterbrained because I'm working so much that I wouldn't be able to do it. Would not be able to do it. So thank you for bearing with me. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. It does really, really good wonders. Share this around. Hell, how about this? I will even, because thanks to Cool Frog, he sent me this little thing right here. Told me, why don't you sign up for this? So you can always buy me a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/ShizzyWiznut. It's hard to say whenever I got this thing on my teeth. But thank you, Cool Frog. I like that idea. That was really, really, really nice of you to do that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's get back to this here, and we should be able to finish this out well. Let's see, if I start at 7:30, yeah, we should be able to finish this out pretty dang quick. And I wonder if there will be anything beyond defense resting.
anything for the record?
Oh, Judge, thank you.
All right. The record should reflect, we did indicate to the defendant his right to testify, his right not to testify.
Oh.
He's discussed his decision with his
Okay.
attorneys. He's made his decision on his own, and he has indicated to the court that he wishes not to testify. And based upon that, I'm going to make a finding that the defendant has knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently waived his right to testify without the jury being in the courtroom, and the record should reflect that. With that, then Ms. Krause, is the defense going to rest?
We are, Judge.
All right, we'll bring the jury out. We'll put that on record. And then one more other housekeeping matter. Is the state ready to do the rebuttal once we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Right,
No.
bring the jury out.
Oh, defense has to do a rebuttal. Oh, I forgot all about that.
I'll ask Ms. Krause, does the defense have any further witnesses?
Judge, the defense does not have any further witnesses. We rest.
All right, the defense now is rested.
Wow.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state has an opportunity to
That
call
was
the rebuttal witness.
that was a pretty strong finish. I mean, that last doctor getting up there just, and Jabroni or whatever the hell that guy's name is, he just looked like an ass the whole time. So we'll see.
As they wish. With that, do you have a witness available, Ms. McNeil?
Yes, we do, Judge, and the state will call Jill Polera. And so let me try to find her number. It would be number 60.
Number 60, Jill Polero.
prosecutor's wife needs to just not be there. She does not look good.
All right, if you could remain standing, raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. You solemnly swear the testimony of this man to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. You can get as close as you can to the microphone. Spell your first and last name for the reporter.
Jill Polera, Jillpulera.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. McNeil.
Ms. Polera, were you married to Paul Griffin?
Yes, I was.
And is that Julie Jensen's brother?
Yes, it is.
Now, currently, are you divorced from him
Yes, I am.
and remarried?
Yes.
And
Huh.
when about did you separate from
Imagine.
Paul Griffin?
2010.
Now, before that time period, and I want you to think about essentially the 1990s, during that time period, did you know Julie Jensen?
Yes, I did.
And did you live near her?
Yes, we did.
About how far away did you live from Julie Jensen?
A mile or two.
And can you describe for us what your relationship with Julie Jensen was?
Julie and I were close. We spent a lot of time together. I babysat the kids. She was my daughter's godmother.
And were you godmother to any of her children?
I am to David, yes. And Julie was in my wedding as well.
Now, during this time period that you knew Julie Jensen, did you come to know Mark Jensen?
Yes, I did.
And did you know them for about the duration of their marriage?
They were married when I came into the family.
And do you remember about what year you would have started to get to know Julie?
Probably around 1985, 86.
Now, when you came to know Julie Jensen and Mark Jensen, did you make any observations about their relationship?
In the beginning of when I first met them, their relationship seemed fine. But as time went on with the kids, things became strained.
And how would you describe,
As it happens
first,
with
let's talk about David, 'cause he's
children.
the oldest child, right?
Yes.
How would you describe how things were in the Jensen marriage when David was a baby?
When David was a baby, he was born with he was very colicky when he was born, and so Paul and I would go down there in the evenings to help Julie out with the baby. She did, the cooking and preparing of meals, and David would be real fussy at that time, and so we would go down and help her with the baby.
And did you see Mark assisting with David?
No, Mark didn't have a lot of interaction with David when he was a little baby.
And was that a source of stress to Julie?
Yes, it was.
And did
Okay.
you see anything else in terms of the interaction of Mark and Julie Jensen after David's birth?
Mark was very demanding of Julie's time. When
All right. Now, I don't have children. And I can't explain this, but to me, it seems like if everybody is fussing over a child, it doesn't tend to help. Now, I know that my brother-in-law is very, 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 very active with his children, whereas his wife, she's not as active because she works a completely different schedule. So he tends to be the one that's more active with the kids. Now, she has 2 kids from a prior marriage that she was very, very active in raising them, as they were children. So sometimes parents act that way. Don't have any explanation for it. I know that my father wasn't very active with me, as far as I can tell, as a baby. Maybe whenever I started hitting my early years, 9, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around in there, might have been more active. I was pretty much on my own, though. I mean, in a sense, I didn't really bother them. They didn't bother me. We just sort of did our own thing, and I showed up to dinner. Now, that's just my perspective as a child, because I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. Not saying that they didn't pay attention to me. I wouldn't have noticed. And, this is me looking at my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Yeah, brother-in-law and sister-in-law in sort of this aspect of, I'm not there all the time. Now, I've seen her be completely active and doing other things only because we might be spending like a week or something there. So I see that she's quite active with her kids, the 2 young ones, and sort of gives him a little bit of a break. So they bounce back and forth. But I mean, if I was over there, I mean, I would say I don't see her paying as much attention to the babies as he does, but doesn't mean that he's not, or doesn't mean that she's not. Just they have odd schedules. Like they'll get up, she'll be up awake before I even wake up, and I wake up really early. So it's hard to tell. It really is hard to tell. Thoughts brought to you by Shizzy. Yeah, sorry. I'll shut my cake hole.
the baby was fussy or needed attention, Mark also seemed to need attention at that point.
And did you make any other observations apart from their baby about how Mark interacted with Julie?
Mark was very demanding of Julie's time. He could be very condescending to her when she would speak.
And Julie became a stay-at-home mother, right?
Yes, she did.
Not too long after David was born, right?
Right.
And did Mark have an opinion of stay-at-home mothers?
Yes, he did. He did not respect stay-at-home moms. I know he told Julie, you can either be a mom or you can work.
And so Julie was aware of that negative opinion.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would say it's negative. Yeah. I mean, sort of pick one. I don't know that would be a horrible thing. It's going to be difficult to do both, but pick.
And was these observations that you made about these interactions between Mark and Julie, was that pretty consistent up until 1998?
Yes.
Now, would you frequently talk to Julie on the phone?
Yes, we had a lot of conversations, especially revolving around our kids.
And do you have a daughter named Kim?
Yes, I do.
And was Kim friendly with David?
Yes, Kim and David are only 2 years apart in age.
And because of their close age, did that cause you and Julie to be together a lot?
Yes, especially when the kids were younger.
Now, what about holidays or birthdays? Would you ever spend those with the Jensen family before Julie died?
The birthdays, we always shared the kids' birthdays together. We were either at the Jensen house or they were at our house for kids' birthdays. Holidays were mostly Julie and Mark were at the Jensens and Paul and I were at my family's home.
So like on Christmas itself, you might not see the Jensens?
No, not on, but we would always get together for the holidays at a different time.
Oh God, no. I wasn't taking like that. No. I was actually poking fun at myself because sometimes I can tend to ramble. Yes, it's not uncommon. So I'm not offended by it. I find it humorous because, sometimes I've got to have somebody tell me, hey, shh.
And would you exchange gifts, especially with the children involved?
Yes.
Now, I want you to think back to around the time period of Thanksgiving of 1998. During that time period, did Julie speak to you at all?
Yes, she called me the day after Thanksgiving and getting prepared for Christmas shopping.
So was she asking you about things for your children?
Yeah, she wanted to know, what they wanted for Christmas, the sizes they were in, those kinds of things.
Now, obviously, you didn't celebrate Christmas with Julie that year, but had she gotten your children presents?
She had, yes.
Now, when you had this conversation with Julie, did she say anything about her marriage?
She did. She was complaining to me about Mark during that conversation that he had been staying out a lot, going on a lot of business trips, not coming home, some heavy drinking, and she knew he was having an affair. She told me that she didn't want to ruin the holidays, but after the holidays, she planned on leaving Mark.
So was your impression, based on that conversation, that she was going to divorce him?
Yes.
That was her plan?
Yes, it was.
After the holidays?
Yes.
Now, was there a prior time, sometime after Douglas was born, when Julie had contemplated divorce and told you about it?
Yes.
And what in particular did Julie tell you in terms of her contemplating divorce in that time period?
I know she was just unhappy again with the marriage, the way things were going, but she was afraid to leave Mark because he said she wouldn't see the kids.
And that time period would have been shortly after Douglas was born, or
I don't recall when it was exactly.
But it wasn't the 1998.
No.
But she had previously expressed that Mark had said she wouldn't be able to see the kids after divorce.
Yes.
Now, you knew Julie for years, right?
Yes.
Was she someone who was a drinker?
No, never.
Would she ever be drunk during the day?
No.
And at some point, did you learn that Julie had had a miscarriage?
Yes, sometime in between David and Doug, but I don't remember exactly when it was.
So it would have been at least some point after David was born and before Douglas was born.
Yes.
The other day I said that. I suspected she had one. It's rough. That's rough. Sorry.
As far as you're aware, she had one miscarriage.
That's all I knew about. Yes.
I think they wanted to leave this as a some sort of explosive revelation.
So I would like to talk to you about the time period after Julie had died. In that time period, was David's birthday coming up?
Yes, David's birthday was at the end of January.
And was there a party for David?
Yes, Mark had a party for David.
Did your family attend?
Yes, it was Paul and myself and my 2 children.
And at that party, did you meet Kelly Labonte?
Yes, we did.
And based on your observations at that time, end of January, did she seem familiar with the home?
Yes, she did.
Now, did you and Paul try to stay in touch with David and Douglas after Julie's death?
Yes, we did.
And were you able to do that?
It was sporadic. When Paul would be in contact with Mark and would want to, if we had Christmas presents or something for the kids, and we would go see the kids then.
Did you feel welcome at the Jensen home? Objection relevance. This is
Overruled. Go ahead and answer.
I mean, Mark would let us in. He would let us in the door, and we would be able to speak with the kids and everything. But it was uncomfortable because Kelly was there.
And did Paul at least make an effort to stay in touch?
He did, yes.
And you did too?
Yes.
At least until 2010?
Mhm.
Is that a yes?
Pardon?
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
You can see the hate and the spite in this woman's eyes. She does not like him at all. Does not come off looking good.
So I have no further questions.
Who's
Thank you.
doing the cross?
I am Judge.
Go ahead.
Ms. Calera, you said that you and Paul at the time when you were married lived about 1 to 2 miles from the Jensens?
Yes.
And that was from what year to what year?
Well, we were married in 1986 and purchased a house right after that. And Mark and Julie were living in an apartment. They built their home, and we built a home, again, a mile or two apart. So from 1986 until Mark moved to the north side.
So 1999.
Mhm.
So you lived 1 to 2 miles from the Jensens from the time you built your house to the time that Mark moved to the north side.
Correct.
And during that time, you said that you did have contact with Mark and Julie Jensen.
Yes.
And you had contact with boys.
Yes.
You went to birthday parties.
Yes.
And that would be one for David in January and one for Douglas in May.
March.
In March, thank you. And then they would come to your house for your children's birthday party.
Correct.
You also testified that for holidays, you didn't spend the holiday together,
Correct.
although you would get together at a later date.
Yes.
Now, you would also find it a little, I would find it a little strange and a little odd, personally, that this is one of Julie's friends. Understandable. But she's not one of Doug's friends. There's not a lot of friendship between those two. For whatever it might be, she may not like him because, of his face. That would be reasonable. So it doesn't seem like Mark was close with her husband. So I don't understand why. My wife and I have some mutual friends, but if something were to happen to me, I couldn't see my wife being, super social with my specific friends. They're friends, and she would be nice and see them and, let them come and visit and things like that if they so desired. But, the only reason that they're there is because of me, and vice versa. A lot of her friends I'm friendly with, but I don't consider them close friends. Even their husbands, I'm friendly with them, and I like them. I don't find them disagreeable people, but I don't know. It does not seem abnormal to me at all.
Did you go on family vacations together?
No, we didn't vacation, but I did a lot of babysitting for Mark and Julie when they needed someone to watch the kids.
So when they went on family vacations to Door County with other families, you weren't the family that they went with?
No.
Now, you were testifying a little bit about Mark's perception of women that stay home.
Yes.
And you are aware that Mr. Jensen's mom was a stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about Julie contemplating divorce.
Yes.
And that was prior to 1998.
Yes.
And you were aware that she had an affair in 1990, 1991.
Yes.
And that was with a man by the name of Perry Tarika.
Yes.
And were you aware of that affair before you received the letter in the mail addressed to you?
No.
So at some point you became aware of that affair.
Yes.
And was that after you got the letter in the mail with your name on it, care of Julie Jensen?
Yes.
Or Julie's name on it, care of you, correct?
I don't remember.
That's the first time you found out about that affair.
Yes.
Julie hadn't told you about it prior to that.
No.
You testified a little bit about helping Julie when David was born and had was kind of fussy, had colic. Is that what you said?
Mhm.
And that Mr. Jensen wasn't as helpful.
Correct.
Were you with Miss Jensen and Mr. Tarika when they had play dates with their children together?
No.
Were you there on the weekend at all when Mr. Tarika spent the entire weekend at her house?
No.
Were you aware that David was in the bedroom next to them that weekend?
No.
You weren't aware of the length of that affair?
No.
She didn't confide in you about that?
Oh,
Did she tell you that in 1991 she filed for divorce?
I don't remember.
And she actually asked for full custody of her child?
I don't remember.
Do you remember talking to her about that?
No.
Do you remember hearing anything about a divorce in 1991?
I remember that she had talked about divorce. I don't remember what year it was.
You also testified that Miss Jensen talked to you sometime around Thanksgiving of 1998.
It was the day after Thanksgiving.
Thank you. So that Friday.
Yes.
And she talked to you about the state of her marriage.
Correct.
And she was unhappy.
Yes.
She told you she was thinking of getting a divorce.
Yes.
After the holidays.
Mhm.
She didn't tell you that she thought Mr. Jensen was going to harm her in any way.
No.
She didn't say that she was afraid of him.
No.
But she told you that she was planning on getting a divorce.
Yes.
Did she tell you about a conversation her and Mr. Jensen had in October in which they had decided that the marriage wasn't working and they were going to go their separate ways?
No.
oh, amazing.
They were just waiting for the right time?
Oh,
You were asked a few questions
Didn't
about the
know
contact
about
you had
that,
with
did you?
David and Douglas after Miss Jensen passed away. There were times that you contacted Mark Jensen to see the boys.
Yes.
And he allowed that to happen.
Yes.
You went to the house.
Yes.
You were able to have conversations with the boys.
Yes.
You were able to give them presents if that was the plan.
Yes.
There was never a time he said, no, you can't see the boys.
I don't recall that.
Because it never happened.
Nothing further. Thank you, ma'am.
Is there any redirect?
Just to clarify, when that letter from Perry Tarika arrived and Julie found out about it, she was pretty embarrassed about that, right?
Yes, she was.
So she didn't want that to happen.
No.
And you were asked about Julie during that conversation the day after Thanksgiving about Julie being unhappy. Did you think she was depressed?
No.
And did you ever see Julie showing any signs of mental instability?
No.
That she was in some way not seeing reality correctly?
No.
And she talked to you frequently on the phone?
Yes.
Even if she didn't see you in person?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Any recross on that?
No, Judge.
All right, thank you. You're excused.
No, what's the point? This woman seems just very bitter. She's gonna grab her stuff and leave
Yes,
because
rebuttal
she was
witness.
angry.
The state calls Teresa Fazio.
Ah, not DeFazio again. Jeez, come on. So sick of the DeFazios.
Keep get as close as you can to the microphone.
Hmm.
And spell your first and last name for the reporter.
Therese, Therese, DeFazio, capital DE, capital Fazio.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. McNeil.
And Ms. DeFazio, you can adjust the microphone so it's in front of you. So Ms. DeFazio, we know you as David's third grade teacher, right?
Yes.
All right. So I want you to think back during this time when David was in your class in third grade. Was there ever a time that David said anything to you about his mom and the computer?
Judge, I'd object. This is hearsay, and she's already testified to this.
This is David's statements that he could not recall. And so this is
Hey,
rebuttal.
It just has to be
Pixel.
outside the presence of the jury.
We'll take a break, folks.
Good to see you also. Good to see you. Oh, yeah, this is all hearsay, especially whenever the child has already been up there and said, I don't remember this. That's all they're trying to do is recover the damage that was done.
All right, the jury is outside of the courtroom. I remember David Jensen's testimony. He basically said I couldn't remember, so he didn't deny it. So where are we going with this then?
How
Well, I think it's appropriate
He
for the
didn't
teacher
affirm
who
it
recalls
either.
the statement to testify to it then, because David did not recall it.
What do you want to say?
I would just say he didn't deny saying it. They didn't try to refresh his recollection with any document. And there's a case about, I don't remember, but in that particular case, the court had doubts about the witness's memory and about the witness was saying, I don't remember, just not to testify. And the Supreme Court of Wisconsin held that where a witness denies recollection of a prior statement and where the trial judge has reason to doubt the good faith of such denial, he may in his discretion declare such testimony inconsistent and permit the prior statement's admission into evidence.
So what does that mean?
I think that the court would have to make a determination that David Jensen said he didn't remember in order to get out of answering.
Well, Judge, David also did testify that he saw
There
his
you
mother on the
go.
computer, and I think this would contradict that because he was pretty much laughing with Ms. DeFazio about his mother could not use the computer. And he
That's a
was-
different question.
So, but it's the
There
same
you
topic,
go.
so her answer would address
No.
that issue as well.
Did he say he didn't remember that either?
Well, he described something contrary to what Ms. DeFazio would say.
Well, the question that he didn't remember, I'm not going to allow you to ask this question on rebuttal. If it's a contradiction, you can get into it.
Yeah.
Well, I think the computer does contradict what David said about seeing
We'll
his
let you
mom.
get into that.
So just to be clear, what's
the
the,
do
so
it?
she can ask if David told Ms. DeFazio whether his mom used the computer, because that was the question to him, is whether his mom used the computer. And we already have testimony from others that she used the computer specifically in regards to Quicken. So what statement is it that they're allowed to get into, I guess?
They can ask a question that the witness answered regarding the computer. They're basically saying that this witness will contradict his answer.
That this witness will contradict David saying he saw his mom on the computer.
Correct, Ms. McNeil?
Well, what I believe she's going
Ah, but here's the beauty of it. Here is the beauty of it. They want to admit prior statements into evidence, but those statements were not made to the court. Those were not of record. Big difference. Saying he doesn't recall statements made to Ms. DeFazio. That's why they had the hearsay objection. So they call out hearsay whenever that's something that somebody else said. So there's a way that they can ask this question, but they've got to, it's really touchy on this particular one. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just telling you, the way that he's looking at this, and I could be wrong, but that's how I would be viewing it from the defense side.
The Supreme Court of Wisconsin held that where a witness denies recollection of a prior statement and where the trial judge has reason to doubt the good faith of such denial, he may in his discretion declare such testimony inconsistent and permit the prior statement's admission into evidence.
So what does that mean?
I think that the court would have to make a determination that David Jensen said he didn't remember in order to get out of answering.
Well, Judge, David also did testify that he saw his mother on the computer, and I think this would contradict that because he was pretty much laughing with Ms. DeFazio about
Different
his mother could not use
question.
the computer. And he
That's a
was-
different question.
So, but it's the same topic. So her answer would address that issue as well.
Did he say he didn't remember that either?
Well, he described something contrary to what Ms. DeFazio would say.
Well, the question that he didn't remember, I'm not going to allow you to ask this question on rebuttal. If it's a contradiction, you can get into it.
Well, I think this computer does contradict what David said about seeing
We'll
his
let you
mom.
get into that one.
So just to be clear, so she can ask if David told Ms. DeFazio whether his mom used the computer, because that was the question to him, is whether his mom used the computer. And we already have testimony from others that she used the computer, specifically in regards to Quicken. So what statement is it that they're allowed to get into, I guess?
They can ask a question that the witness answered regarding the computer. They're basically saying that this witness will contradict his answer.
That this witness will contradict David saying he saw his mom on the computer.
Correct, Ms. McNeil?
Well, what I believe she's going to say
Oh, that she wasn't proficient on the computer. Doesn't matter. She could use the computer.
is David blurting out that his mom doesn't even know anything about computers, that he's teaching her about computers and she doesn't know.
But that wasn't in court.
And what was his answer to that?
Well, his recollection of his mom and computers was, I saw my mom on the computer. I don't know what she was doing. I saw her on there. And so,
We'll go into this limited area and that's it, because there sounds like a contradiction.
well,
Yeah.
I also have questions for this witness about what David said regarding his mother's condition.
Are they contradictory answers?
Well, David said he couldn't remember.
I'm not going to let you go into areas where you didn't remember.
There you go.
So then I have for this witness, I'm going to ask her about what Julie told her about Laura Coster, which would be a direct contradiction of Laura Coster's testimony.
We'll let you get into whatever contradictions we have. I'll let you get into it.
Okay.
All right, bring the jury back.
But if he doesn't remember, you're going to get that shit thrown out. They're pushing it. Prosecution is pushing it. Yeah. Yep. They're going to be, defense is going to be watching this part close. Because you never know what little thing is going to sway a jury. I think defense has them on the ropes.
The jury's back in the courtroom on the record and on Mark Jensen. The appearances are the same. The witness is still under oath. Go ahead, Ms. McNeil.
So do you recall David saying anything to you about his mom and computers?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead. What was that?
It was at open house. I was looking for someone when she volunteered to help me. I asked her if she knew anything about computers so that if I asked for help in computer lab, she could help.
And so my question is, do you remember David saying anything about his mom and
Yes,
computers?
he said, no, he kind of laughed and said, no, she doesn't know much about computers. I've been teaching her. And then he, another time in the classroom when we were talking about computers, he was saying, yeah, my mom doesn't know anything. And we started
Maybe.
having a conversation in the classroom about how many of your
I
parents
think
probably don't know
that's
how to
what
use
it is, a
computers because
hearing aid.
back in that time period, computers coming in the home was very rare. It was just starting to come into homes.
Yeah, I think
So
it's
David
a
blurted that out
hearing
about his
to
mom,
help him
and that
here.
started your class discussion.
Right. We had a whole class discussion about parents and their children teaching the parents.
Now, after David had returned to school, after his mother's death, did he say anything about what had happened when he went home on December 3rd, the day of his mom's death?
Objection, hearsay.
Well, once again, I think he gave a contrary account.
It's overruled. Go ahead.
So what, if anything, did David say in terms of what happened when he got home the evening of his mother's death?
Judge, I object this to hearsay. This is what we specifically just talked about when the jury was out of the room.
She said it's contradiction, so I'm going to let her do it.
It's because of the I don't know.
Well, I disagree.
Back in the jury room, folks. Sorry.
Yeah. I knew that they were going to pull that shit. Horrible.
Yeah, jury is outside the courtroom. I might not have been clear, but I think I told the attorneys if there's a contradiction, I'm going to allow it for impeachment. And now you're telling me, Ms. Krause, this question and answer was not a contradiction?
I don't know, because what we talked about was, I thought what the court ruled is if it was asked of David Jensen and he said, I don't know, the court wasn't going to allow cross-examination on that. So I guess I don't know. Specifically because he did say, I don't know to some of the things about when he got home or what he told Ms. DeFazio.
What answers are you saying that he has a contradiction answer to?
So David gave an account of coming home, his dad telling him and his brother to stay in the living room and not go to the mom's room. What David had told Ms. DeFazio was that when they got home, David wanted to see his mother, but the defendant told him to take Douglas and the dog for a walk. So it is contradictory to what David said occurred.
Okay. I don't have any issue with that. I thought we were getting into the other stuff. So unfortunately, Judge, I just didn't know, because when we talked about it during the break, when the jury was out, that wasn't discussed.
Let's do this so we don't have to keep bringing the jury back. Go over what areas you think you're going to get into so we have an understanding of whether we need to discuss it without the jury here.
So Judge, I'm just asking about that, what David told his teacher had happened when he got home, and then about the conversation that Julie had with Ms. DeFazio about Laura Coster.
All fine.
All right? We all on the same page?
Thank you, Judge.
Wonderful. Bring the jury back.
Make this short and sweet. Good job. Good job. Make sure you hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, reach over there and hit that little bell. Ding. Share it around. And if you're feeling the urge, you can always buy me a coffee.
All right, the jury's back. Thank you for your patience this afternoon, folks. With that, you can ask your questions, Ms. McNeil.
So Ms. DeFazio, I was just asking you, once David had returned to school, did he say anything about what had happened the late afternoon when he returned home on the day of his mother's death? What did he say his dad had told him or had occurred?
When he got home, it was after 4 o'clock because he had been at a French class at school. And it was dark. He went to the door like he was going in, and his dad stopped him and said, "You take the dog and Dougie and go for a walk." He wouldn't let them go in to see his mother. He wanted to go and see his mom.
And by that time in the evening, it would have been dark.
Oh, yes. After 4, it's in November, it's dark. And on Lakeshore Drive, there are no street lights at that time anyway. And only lights would be the lights of the yard, lights of the residents out there.
Now I want to
Oh, wait a second now. Wait a second. I'm gonna repeat her question because she's saying it was after 4, but supposedly he was there before 4. This isn't gonna look good.
in the evening, it would have been dark.
Oh, yes. After 4, it's in November, it's dark. And said, "You take the dog and Dougie and go for a walk." He wouldn't let them go in to see his mother. He wanted to go and see his mom.
Mm-hmm. Now, she's wrong. She's gonna lose on this one.
And by that time in the evening, it would have been dark.
Oh, yes. After 4, it's in November, it's dark. And on Lakeshore Drive, there are no street lights at that time anyway. And only lights would be the lights of the yard, lights of the residents out there.
Now I want to ask you about one more conversation. So you had told us in detail about the conversation you had with Julie Jensen on November 25th of 1998. During that conversation, obviously you heard some disturbing things. Did you ask Ms. Jensen whether she had told anybody else her concerns?
Yes, I asked her if she told anyone else, and she said she had told a police officer at Pleasant Prairie, a friend that she knew.
Just strike as unresponsive and hearsay.
Objection.
And from the motion in limine, Judge.
Overruled. Go ahead.
So I'll just ask you very directly. Did she talk to you about telling her sister-in-law, Laura Coster?
Yes, she did. She told me she told Laura everything she had told me that day.
And that included her concerns that the defendant was going to kill her.
Yes, it included that. And she told me that her sister-in-law is a friend. Actually, she's more than a sister-in-law. She's my friend. And she said she warned her to be careful, that you don't know what he can do.
That's just
Nothing further.
Doing the cross.
I am, Judge.
Go
Thank you. Ms. DeFazio, you had this conversation in your classroom about computers.
Yes,
And it was during that time David said, "I've been teaching her."
yes.
You don't know what David was teaching his mother.
He said he taught her how to turn on the computer. She didn't know where the button was,
Did he
and
tell-
how to open programs.
Did he tell you that he had seen his mom on the computer?
No, he did not.
Did you know that Miss Jensen did the home checkbook on the computer?
No,
Did you know that David enjoyed doing a painting program on the computer?
I'm not sure if I remember that, but he might have.
The conversation that you had with Miss Jensen on November 25th, that was about a conversation she had with Miss Coster.
Yes.
The thing you just testified about.
Yes.
You weren't present during that conversation.
No.
It was also part of your conversations with Julie Jensen that she told you her husband was controlling.
Yes.
That he wouldn't let her get a job.
Right.
That he wouldn't let Douglas be put in daycare.
Right.
This was around the same time as those conversations.
Into an extra daycare. He was already in daycare in the morning.
All day school.
The afternoon was going to be a special needs partnership we had at the school. And so
I remember that from your
I'm
direct.
objecting to her interrupting the witness.
Let the witness answer. Go ahead, Mr. Fazio.
I thought you'd finished. I'm sorry, Ms. Fazio.
It's right. It's a peer helper program. And if he turned 3, and he was just about to turn 3, he could then apply. Doesn't necessarily mean you get in, but you apply for the program to be a mentor for children who have special needs. So a regular, normal child with children who have unusual learning styles.
And I remember you testifying about that a couple of weeks ago. And it was your understanding that Mark would not allow Julie to sign Douglas up for that.
That's right.
And the conversation about Miss Coster was around the same time as those
back,
conversations.
Leanie. Welcome back.
November 25th.
I'm trying to think if that was all the same date. Yes, I think it was.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions.
Anything else from the state?
No, yeah.
All right, thank you. You're excused.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Rebuttal witness.
The state call is Paul Ratsberg.
All right.
This bonehead again. Arr. Rough stuff.
You remain standing, Lieutenant Rasberg. You solemnly swear the testimony is meant to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Get as close as you can to the microphone. Spell your first and last name again for the reporter.
First name Paul, P-A-U-L, last name spelling, R-A-T-Z-B-U-R-G.
Go ahead, Ms. McNeil.
Just a few specific questions for you. Shortly after Julie Jensen's death, did you receive a phone call from a person who identified herself as Laura Coster?
Yes, I did.
And what did this person say in the phone call?
She was concerned. She identified herself as Laura Coster and said something to the effect, I think my brother killed my best friend.
And this was a short conversation, I take it.
Very short, yes.
But after that, did you attempt to have a much more thorough and long conversation with Ms. Coster?
Yes.
Were you ever able to do so?
I was not able to hook up with her.
And she eventually declined to speak with you.
Correct.
I have an exhibit to show you.
That stance is just smug. I find this
Show you what's been marked as State's
prosecutor
Exhibit
being
131.
smug also.
You recall testifying about the Jensen home computer and seizing the Jensen home computer, correct?
Yes.
And so how does Exhibit 131, how does that relate to the Jensen home computer?
This is a Dell receipt for the Jensen home computer. I can remember comparing the serial numbers on it, and it's dated 7/2 of 1998.
So based on that receipt, that would indicate that the Jensens received that computer sometime in July of 1998.
Correct.
And that receipt, is that something that you got from the residence, the Jensen residence?
Yes.
So I would just move 131 into evidence.
Any objection? All right, 131 comes in.
And just to clarify the timing of some things, you had the detailed conversation with Mark Jensen on April 21st of 1999.
Yes.
And it was that same day that you talked to David Jensen.
It is.
And do you recall when Mark Jensen was talking to you, him making references to things that David had said?
Yes.
And he knew that you were talking to David as well.
He gave me permission to speak with David.
All right, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Any cross?
Just a couple of things.
Nothing at this time? Just a couple of. Oh, I'm sorry.
The opposite of what you thought I said. Or hoped, right? Yeah. The conversation
that was a
with Laura
slide
Coster.
on the
Yes.
judge.
Did you review your police reports prior to coming here today? Yes. And is there a report of that conversation with Laura Coster? In my report. In your summary, correct? Yes. Okay. There's are you able to say which date Laura Coster contacted you? I could not. No. It's not in there, right? It is not. Okay. Did you ask her questions? I did not. So she called you and made this statement, and you asked no follow-up questions? I asked follow-ups, but the voice on the phone was emotional. She was crying, and she, so to speak, hung up on me. And then I made efforts in trying to recontact her several times. You remember it as her reaching out to you? Absolutely. She called the police department, the main line, and then she asked for me, or at least she inquired who was handling the Julie Jensen death.
Oh, what? It's beautiful because what he said was complete smartass to the way that the judge basically told him that they could pull in certain things and then didn't. Oh, we'll go back to it. No, it's good. It's good what he says.
All right, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Any cross?
Just a couple of things.
Nothing at this time? Just a couple of. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. The opposite of what you thought I said.
That's why they laughed. Just the opposite of what you thought I said.
Good morning. Or hopes,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. The conversation that you
That
testified
was
just now about with
calling
Laura
out the
Coster.
judge.
Yes. Which date? No follow-up questions? I asked follow-ups, but for me, or at least she inquired who was handling the Julie Jensen death, and then the call was transferred to me, and I happened to be in my office, and I picked up the phone, and then we had that brief conversation. And we don't know when that was. It was in December of 1998. But your report doesn't say when that was, right? No, it does not. And do you have separate notes of that conversation? No. Do you have notes of what precisely you asked her? No. Or her responses to any questions you may have asked? I didn't ask any questions of her. Oh, you didn't ask any questions of her? Yes. She disconnected with me shortly after she made that statement. She seemed to be rather emotional. And then I made efforts in trying to recontact Laura Coster, and they were unsuccessful. You had made a call where the Costers scheduled a time to meet with you, correct? That is correct. And then you got a call from Ms. Coster's husband asking to postpone that, correct? Correct. That would have been in December of 1999. Now, your report doesn't indicate this, but you never contacted the Costers to reschedule, correct? I did. In fact, if you look further in my report, there's a conversation in 02 that I had with Mr. Coster with a hearing from here that I asked if I could meet with him, and then I've been trying to get in touch with him. Oh, I see. So, because the conversation you're talking about is 1999. Or 1998, I'm sorry. And it can get confusing. The phone call that she made to me, or at least identified herself as that, was in December of 1998. And I don't want to cut you off. Okay. And then in December of 1999, we had a scheduled appointment. I believe it was 12/11 of 99. And then
So
Todd
a year
Coster called me
later.
and canceled it. And then in 02, I met them out in front of the courthouse here, and I talked to Todd, and I asked him again if we can, I'd like to talk to Laura. I'm really glad you clarified this. So the phone call that is referenced but doesn't have a specific date. That was December of 1998, you believe? It was December of 98, yes. And then you scheduled a follow-up meeting with them more than a year later? Yes, that would be correct. Yes, in 99. In December of 1999? Exactly, yes. That's the meeting that got put on hold, correct? Well, Todd Coster called me and he canceled the meeting. Did he say in December of 1999 that they wanted to get through the holidays? He could have said that, but I don't recall that specifically.
Of course
And
you
then
would.
the next attempt you made to reach out to them was in 2002? No, I made several attempts to recontact them between 1999 and 2002. They were here for a hearing as well as I was in this courthouse, and I saw them, and so to speak, I kind of cornered them and said, "Hey, I still want to talk to your wife, Laura Coster. I'd like to find out what information she has on this case." And he said he'd get back to me.
So your first attempt at scheduling a meeting with them was more than a year after Julie Jensen had passed away.
No, I stopped by their house after I received that phone call. I was extremely concerned. Obviously, she had some important information, so I made numerous stop by the house. I left my card in their door, and also made any phone attempts. I stopped by the house 3-4 times after that phone call and attempted to contact them to interview Laura Coster.
And what you were finally able to schedule with them was over a year later.
Correct, yes.
The computer receipt that you just talked about,
Yes, sir.
is it your awareness from investigation records that this was their second home computer?
I'm not sure what you mean by the second home computer.
This wasn't the Jensen's first family home computer.
That I don't know.
Oh,
Remember that?
I don't remember any talk about a computer previous to the one I seized on December 3rd, 1998.
you sure? Sure there wasn't another one? Want to stake your life on it?
Nothing else.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
So all of a sudden he bought a computer and first thing he does is look at ways to...
I do not wish to
Delete
violate a
his
rule,
wife.
but we do have a video.
All right, how long is the video?
3 minutes.
All right, I think we can do that one. And which exhibit or which video is this?
So I'll have to have this marked.
All right, let's mark it.
This is redundant BS. I'm gonna fast forward through it, unless you guys tell me that you don't want me to, because I do not like this redundant crap of the same stuff that we've already seen.
Exhibit 132, and this is Ted Voigt.
Just please forward. Forward. One's for forward. For fast forward. There we go. Do.
And I remember that this conversation occurred between you. It was after I got back from Julie's description of a conversation she had with Laura Coster.
Well, at the time, Julie told me that what was going on. She lived with him for 18 years, and you don't know what he's capable of.
He interviewed you regarding your... Yes, you.
He was listening to hotel.
Right.
But yes, he did.
You've seen
All right, we've already seen this one.
Dr. Julie Jensen's death, true?
Yes.
We've already seen this.
It happened in 1998. And I did report the date is wrong on it. He was in 30 minutes. Yes, correct.
Have you read...
Probably.
Is it in here? Take a look.
You want to go ahead?
Sure. Detective Ratsford read anything in that report about his conversation with you in which you mentioned Laura Coster on December 4th, 1998?
No, he didn't.
Okay. Could you please take a look at the handwritten statement that's dated December 4th, 1999? Tell me if there's anything.
I know, he didn't put it.
It's not in any report at any time, correct?
I really don't know. And this one you hold me, I'm not sure. I'll have to take it and study.
Ratsford wrote it out for you, right? And 29, that he just acknowledged, does not contain any such statement about Laura Coster.
Do you recall the question?
Yeah. Pretty harsh.
Are you aware of any written note anywhere that contains this information? And just nobody ever thought that was important enough to put down. Is that what your
To me,
testimony
it
is?
was important. To some other people, wasn't important. I remember talking to
Julie that day. Anyway, that's it. You and Julie Jensen about Laura Coster.
Sunday.
You know, I said the case, and the question was,
I think someone in the police station about it when Mr. Rutherford that day to my shop because I was upset.
I don't think I look similar to him.
Two in the
But
same-
if you say so.
All right, it'll...
Might be because my grandfather was from a
So that's the end of States Exhibit 132. And this is
Eastern
moved
European
All right, it'll be
country
received. 132 is accepted.
on one side of my family. I might have a little Slavic in
All right, I think
me.
it's a good time to take a break. Again,
Not
folks,
that
don't worry
way.
about the case. We'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Good time to take a break, yes. Because that was...
Right.
And the hemorrhage is quite significantly different from the lividity.
Oh, great. Medical examiner.
We are back on the record on Mark Jensen, 2002 CF 314. Appearances are the same for the record. The jury's back in the courtroom. And who is the next rebuttal witness from the state?
Dr. Mary Mainland, Your Honor.
All right, doctor, can you come up here and I'll swear you in again?
Oh, boy. See, they just keep bringing up
Solemn swear the
these
testimony is made to be the truth.
rebuttal
Truth, so help you God.
witnesses that are supposed to
Again,
be
get as close as you
so
can to the microphone.
knowledgeable.
Spell your first and last name for the reporter.
Mary Mainland, Marymainland.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Jambos.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Mainland. Thank you for coming back all the way.
She's
to the
a
floor. We appreciate it.
mainliner.
And I'm going to start by talking to you about the distinction between bruises on Julie Jensen's rib cage and lividity. Did you see any evidence of lividity on the left side of Julie Jensen's rib cage when you looked at the autopsy photos?
Yes,
But did you also see evidence of hemorrhaging?
yes,
And I just showed you another photograph we had, correct?
yes,
And does that photograph more clearly delineate between the hemorrhaging and the lividity?
yes,
Would it assist you in explaining this to the jury if we put that up on the screen?
yes.
And Your Honor, this will be Exhibit 133. I'll direct your attention to the screen. Madam Clerk, could you ensure that the TV is, that my computer's connected to the TV, please?
All right, you demanding little prick.
Now, can you see that adequately from where you're seated?
Yes,
And is this a better photograph, a better picture of the injuries to Julie Jensen's ribcage?
yes,
Now, I'm going to show you this. I'm pointing out this kind of darker area here and here and here and here and here. And can you tell me what those somewhat darker areas, what those reflect?
lividity.
So in your opinion, that appears to be lividity on the left side of Julie Jensen's ribcage.
Yes,
Now, what about this dark spot right here?
So that is a very good question. So for having a hung jury, you basically have to have a good split in the jury, saying there's no way that they're going to from a lost jack. Okay. They have to find that there's some doubt. That's basically what they have to do. If they find some doubt, or they can't find reasonable doubt, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to actually, have not a whole lot of cases end up in a hung jury. 9 times out of 10, before they even hit the closing statement, the jury's already made up their mind. And I mean, juries can be fickle. Juries can be completely fickle. I don't even know. I don't know where that is. Now, my grandfather was from Poland. My grandmother was from Germany. They were both, I believe, Roman Catholic. My grandfather came here, then this is on my father's side, came here in 1901, and he was about 3 years old. So, yeah, he was, my father was first generation American, Croatia, Yugoslavia. Nice. I like Croatia. Croatia is beautiful. If you ever get a chance to see it, oof, beautiful. I had a sister-in-law that worked in Croatia with her husband that did, not foreign service, but maybe that's what it is. Yeah, something like that, foreign service. That's the best description I can give.
This dark spot right here and this dark spot right there. Can you tell us what those 3 marks are?
They appear to be hemorrhage.
Horrible
The hemorrhage is quite significantly
rebuttal
different from the lividity,
witnesses.
isn't it?
In this photo, yes.
I have an additional objection to it.
All right, what's the new objection?
Based
No, come on, woman. Learn to read.
On page 3, it says, upon reflecting the skin and underlying soft tissues, there's a small amount of hemorrhage involving the soft tissues and muscles attached to the left, second, third, and fourth ribs.
So this is the second rib right here, looking at the,
Yes,
and this is the hemorrhaging he's referring to?
yes, I believe so.
And this is,
section, speculation with I believe so, and what is he referring to?
Why don't you just rephrase it?
Yeah.
do you have an opinion in looking at this photo as to what it is that Dr. Shambles is likely referring to when he's referring to hemorrhaging on the second, third, and fourth rib?
Yes,
What is this right here?
Yes.
that's hemorrhage.
And that's on the second rib, correct?
Yes,
And what's this right here?
hemorrhage.
And that's on the third rib, correct?
Yes,
And what's this right here? Let's see, right here.
hemorrhage.
And that's on the fourth rib, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, doctor. Now, I'm going to change topics here. We also heard from a medical toxicologist in this case who said that she couldn't draw any inferences at all about the cause or about the manner of death, just based upon the amount of ethylene glycol that was in the decedent's blood at the time of blood and stomach at the time of her death. Are you able to draw any inferences based upon that small amount of information?
If you,
Well, of
you
course.
need to take into consideration the rest of the, the rest of the history. Julie Jensen's progress from the time she had her first dose until the time that she was deceased.
Well, one of the things that you know is that Julie Jensen received no medical intervention from the time of her first dose to the time that she died, correct?
Correct.
Now, have you examined or have you seen the case studies of persons who died from ethylene glycol suicide?
I'm sure that she
Familiarize
has.
yourself with their blood alcohol, or their blood ethanol glycine content at the time of their death with respect to these suicides.
Judge, I do have an objection to this. It's a topic that we discussed during Dr. Mainland's previous testimony.
Is that the same area that we're going into, Mr.
Yes, Your Honor. And we
I made a rule.
we did.
Oh, I bet they
Well,
wish they
I'm sorry, I
could.
got to do this.
Oh, jeez. Good Lord. Come on.
Side of the courtroom, and I remember I didn't allow that testimony in, so.
Yes, and that's
Yes.
why we didn't use it in our case in chief. However, at that time, you said that the reason for it was that the defense did not have an opportunity to have their experts to opine on it or talk about it. And so at
No,
that
that's
time,
not
I
what he
indicated, well,
said.
the state may reserve the right to use that in rebuttal. And I had not heard that we were not going to be allowed to use it in rebuttal.
Tough shit.
Barry,
I don't remember the latter part of that.
I'm starting to remember, I think I did say, after we had you an opportunity to voir dire her, that if your experts testified and we came back with a rebuttal witness, I was going to allow it in.
I have an additional objection to it.
All right, what's the new objection?
Based on the voir diring of Dr. Mainland on this, that this is largely based on inadmissible hearsay. This is not something that's been published. This is her own compilation. And as she explained in court the last time, she had her own handwritten notes summarizing other reports that she relied on without the ability to provide those reports to defense or in court.
Wouldn't you think that would go to the weight of her testimony?
Well, I think it goes to just basic discovery in terms of the underlying data that she relied on to come up with this. So she relied on reports that she obtained through her own employment, is what she explained. And then she went on to explain that she doesn't have those reports. And so she relied on things and then came up with her list, but was unable to provide what she relied upon to the parties in this case. And so that's the reason for that objection in terms.
In other words, show your work. That's all he's asking. Show your work.
So basically, the foundation for this is inadmissible hearsay that that we don't have an ability to cross on because we haven't been provided it.
Go ahead.
Well, Your Honor, first of all, this witness should be allowed to testify about this, and that you are right, it does go to weight, and they can cross-examine her about the information that she looked at and coming to these conclusions. But what she'll testify to is that she examined known ethylene glycol suicides, and she examined what the blood ethylene glycol test results were in cases where there'd been no medical intervention, which is exactly what we have here. And she'll be able to testify that the amount of ethylene glycol in the blood at death of ethylene glycol suicides, where there was no medical intervention, is somewhere between 40 and 200 times higher than it was in this case.
I'll give you one more shot.
40 and
Really don't have anything else
200
to add.
times.
It's this is her summary of underlying data that we have not been provided with and there's no ability for us to review it. And so it's her list. And as she explained, the bulk of it, she had none of the underlying reports to provide us.
Well, I know we did the voir dire, and the defense had an opportunity to get into this area, so they were aware of that. And I remember mentioning that it would have been helpful for the defense's experts to have that information. So I didn't allow it in the state's case in chief. And the defense obviously was aware of this after that because we have the exhibit. What number is it for the record?
Excellent. Grab a coffee.
My able co-counsel
Kick
is
back.
Exhibit 90.
Relax.
All right, Exhibit 90. So it was marked. And then the defense had an opportunity before their expert witnesses testified to have that information. That was my concern at that time. Now there's an objection as to what data she used. And I think it goes to the weight. Mr. Perry, you are free to ask her that question. And obviously that goes to the weight of what she's trying to tell the jury. So I'm going to allow it in rebuttal. So bring back the jury.
They lost. It's all right. They'll overcome it.
Same. We're on a rebuttal witness, Dr. Malin. Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. You can ask your question, Mr. Jambois.
Thank you. So, Dr. Mainland, in the course of your evaluation of this case, did you happen to examine other ethylene glycol death cases that you became aware of?
Yes.
And did you notice any pattern in terms of the distinction between ethylene glycol suicides and ethylene glycol homicides?
Yes.
What was that you noticed?
In suicides, typically, the amount of ethylene glycol in the decedent's system is higher.
And when we talk about higher, is it
Sometimes, but not always.
What do you mean by that? Tell us what your findings were when you looked at ethylene glycol suicides, what the average ethylene glycol, ethylene glycol ratio was.
All right, I was able to find 15 cases locally and in Florida, and of these 15 suicides,
I don't know about you, but in church, I didn't really go up and down. It was more side to. Oh, I'm sorry. How perverted of me.
the average amount was 2,072 milligrams per liter of ethylene glycol.
So that would be, and that's about 40 times higher than it was in this case.
Yes,
And the range was what? I mean, what was the highest amount that you found in ethylene glycol suicide?
the highest was over 9,000.
Was it 9,746?
Yes.
Okay. And now some of these people that had died from ethylene glycol poisoning as a consequence of suicide, some of them had received medical attention, correct?
Yes.
And the people that received medical attention, how did their blood alcohol level or the blood ethylene glycol level compare to those who had not received medical treatment?
Well, there are two on the list where the ethylene glycol was not detected post-mortem. I believe, speculation, I'm sorry. Those two cases.
Oh, nice. She totally got herself on that one. Oh, speculation. I'm sorry. Because what's going to happen is they are going to tear her up and cross so bad, because it's just like, well, you have no proof of any of this. You're just randomly making crap up. That's how I would present it.
Cases were cases that had received medical
Of course, they'll
assistance
do it much
and had
nicer
survived
than
for
I would.
quite a while in the hospital.
Now, there's been discussion about metabolic rate, but isn't the first question that we need to address when we're looking at the amount of ethylene glycol in the stomach is the absorption rate, correct?
Correct.
So tell the jury what the difference is between the absorption rate and the metabolic rate.
Yeah, you know, before you can metabolize or break down a drug or a poison or anything, it needs to be absorbed into the system. So the first step, you know, in ethylene glycol metabolism, in the breakdown of this compound, is that it has to be absorbed. So it's absorbed in the stomach and in the small intestine, and it's absorbed directly into the blood.
Now, how long after an initial dose of 30 milliliters of ethylene glycol, after an initial dose of 30 milliliters of ethylene glycol, how long would you expect that to take to be fully absorbed into the system?
Again, there's a range within the literature. The literature says rapidly and completely.
What literature?
An hour is.
Can you provide that
a figure
literature?
that I've seen quite a bit.
And that's really, since you're talking to a bunch of people who aren't medical doctors or forensic pathologists, ethylene glycol is absorbed much like any other alcohol, isn't it? Isn't it absorbed in the system much the same way?
Yes.
And
No.
so most of us, unless we're teetotalers, have consumed, say, in my case, we'll say 2 glasses of wine. So after I've absorbed 2 glasses of wine, 1 hour after I finish the last glass of wine, you would expect both glasses of wine to be fully absorbed into my system, correct?
We're talking about if you were on an empty stomach
Yes.
at the time.
So if I had an empty stomach, after an hour after I finish my last glass of 2 glasses of wine, how much wine do you expect to find in my stomach?
Little to none.
So certainly 24 hours after I've absorbed a glass of or consumed a glass of wine, you would expect to find no ethylene glycol in my system.
Correct.
So say 24 hours after Julie Jensen absorbed or consumed her first, assuming she had a dose of ethylene glycol in the evening hours of December 1st, 1998.
They're
you would
going to
expect that
hammer
by
her
December 3rd,
so
1998,
hard.
That ethylene glycol would be fully gone from her stomach, correct?
Yes, if it were, unless it were a massive dose, in which case she probably would have died earlier on in the course.
Now, if she was manifesting symptoms of ethylene glycol poisoning in the early morning hours of December 1st, and then on December 3rd,
Oh,
in the afternoon, at the time of death, she still had ethylene glycol in her
hammered
stomach.
on this.
Would that be reflective of a second dose of
Oh
ethylene
my
glycol?
God.
Yes.
Now, we also heard from a medical toxicologist who said that you just can't draw any inferences at all from the amount of ethylene glycol that's in one's stomach at the time of death. You can't draw any inferences at all about how much ethylene glycol they've had to consume. Is that true?
Again, you have to take into consideration the history, the medical course of the person.
So looking at the course that we have here, Julie Jensen received no medical treatment for any ethylene glycol poisoning. Is that true?
Yes.
And she was manifesting signs of ethylene glycol poisoning at, say, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, correct?
Yes.
And then she was manifesting signs of ethylene glycol poisoning in the evening hours of December 2nd, 1998. Is that true?
Yes.
So is that consistent with two doses of ethylene glycol?
Yes, it could be.
Now, had you also examined cases of ethylene glycol homicide?
I have not studied them or I've looked at a few individual case reports, and unfortunately, most of the homicide information on ethylene glycol homicides is out on the internet. It's public knowledge. I don't have a whole lot of scientific data from those cases.
Well, we'll stick to the data that you employed. The data that you collected related to suicides, correct?
Correct.
And according to the data you collected, on average, the average suicide death at the time of autopsy, the decedent had an ethylene glycol concentration of 2,072 milliliters per liter, which would be like 2,072
Okay, that's stupid.
technology.
Milligrams.
What is this?
Exactly.
They've already
So
gone
the vomitative
over.
mark- vomit-
I want to see what defense does. This is just redundant bullshit from the
You're not
prosecutor.
a toxicologist, are you?
No.
You're not a clinical toxicologist?
No, I'm not.
Not a forensic toxicologist?
No, I'm not.
This is this study that you're referring to. How many cases did you look at?
I looked at a total of 21.
Okay, and what are the dates of those 21 cases?
They range from sometime in the 1990s to several years ago to about 2018.
And where did you find those?
I found them in Florida, in Tampa, Florida, in Milwaukee, and in Kenosha counties, Wisconsin. And there were 2, I believe, from Waukesha County.
And who decided that these were suicides or accidents?
The medical examiner in charge of the case, typically the one who did the autopsy.
And in each of these cases, did you have information as to ethylene glycol levels
Yes, I believe so.
and information in terms of when the ingestion of ethylene glycol took place?
In some of them, yes, some of them, no.
In some of them, yes, some of them, no.
That's correct.
Okay. And the ones that you didn't, did you somehow determine when they had ingested ethylene glycol?
No,
And exactly how much ethylene glycol each of these had ingested?
no, there was no way to tell that. Unless, of course, they made a statement.
Do you have
I don't know.
specific, can you look at your list and tell me the weights and ages of each person on this list?
I can tell you ages, I cannot tell you weights.
Can you tell me their each person's individual half-life for ethylene glycol?
No, I can't.
You mentioned that this came up when you testified before in this case a week or two ago. I don't know. It's all a blur. And you said on direct that a figure you've seen for absorption rate is an hour. Do you remember testifying to that?
Yes.
And I asked you on cross that the figure actually that's commonly cited is 1 to 4 hours. Do you remember that?
Okay. So I'll address this really quick. He has 4 attorneys or 3 attorneys, something like that. Yeah, he has 3 attorneys and there's only 2 prosecutors, and these little tables that they have, there's just not enough room for everybody to sit there. And I think they're trying to keep the fact covered up that he's in handcuffs and ankle chains and all that stuff. So that might be why they have 2 tables. I don't think it's because of the COVID stuff. I think it's just because they're the tables that they have for this particular courtroom, but I'm not sure.
Vaguely.
And you agreed with that 1 to 4 hours is what's commonly cited.
If I agree to it, I agree to it.
Okay. Does that seem like something you have not read?
No.
Okay. So it's consistent with what you've read is 1 to 4 hours for absorption rates.
Yes.
Do you have your study in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure. I'm going to see if there's an electronic copy of this. Judge, I'm going to ask for a moment so we can scan this in so I can publish this to the jury.
Go ahead.
Oh, there we go. What they needed to do. Good job.
Do you see what's up on the screen?
Yes.
Does that accurately reflect what's in front of you?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And the only difference I suspect is that in the upper right corner I'd written S90, and that's the that's the exhibit, what's marked on the sheet in front of you, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Aside from that, absolutely consistent with what you have?
Yes.
On the left-hand side, it lists suicides, correct?
Yes.
And this is milligrams per liter?
Yes.
And milligrams per liter is, that's the level, you put that in there because that's what Julie Jensen's measure was?
Yes, and it's also the one that I commonly use, so that I'm most familiar with.
Okay.
Oh,
You have up there that
Just
the average
get
of these
hammered
15
so
instances
hard.
is 2,072.
Yes,
And again, with the caveat that we don't know when any of these people ingested ethylene glycol, correct?
correct.
And we don't know if
she is like the most beautiful $2 whore in a room of $50 whores. She's going to get hammered hard.
they had ingested second or third doses of ethylene glycol.
Correct.
And we don't know the amount of ethylene glycol that any of these individuals ingested.
We know some of them, but most of them we do not.
And we don't know anything about these individuals' metabolism of ethylene glycol.
Correct.
And we don't know their absorption rates of ethylene glycol.
Correct.
The average is computed by adding them all up and divided by 15, right?
Yes.
You see several on here that are well below 2072, don't you?
Yes.
You see one on here that says less than 20.
Yes.
That was determined to be a suicide.
Yes.
You see two on here that say not detected.
Yes.
Also determined to be suicides.
Yes.
In the middle column, you have accidents, correct?
Yes.
And on the far right, you have undetermined.
Yes.
What does NT stand for?
Not tested. In one case, there was no specimen available. The body was buried. And in the other case, it was a late report. The body had already been cremated. It came through over the phone.
So we have 21 cases on here total, correct?
Yes.
And it's your testimony, as I understand it, that from looking at this, you're saying that a higher level of ethylene glycol is consistent with suicide than with homicide.
I would say that it's more consistent with suicide.
And you have no homicides listed on the sheet, do you?
No.
I think you testified that, you can take it off, yeah, thank you, that a large enough dose early on would kill somebody.
Yes.
Okay. And what precisely would they have died of if it was a large enough dose?
Ethylene glycol poisoning.
And would this be in phase 1 that they would die?
A person can die in any of the 3 phases.
If it was a large enough dose, are you suggesting that they would die in phase 1 of ethylene glycol?
I'm suggesting that the larger the dose, the more likely
That what would happen?
that the person could die in phase 1.
Of ethylene glycol poisoning?
Yes.
If you're not catching
You're
what
familiar
he's
with the concept
throwing.
that what people die of with ethylene glycol poisoning is not the ethylene glycol itself, right?
It's the breakdown products.
And the breakdown products haven't occurred in phase 1, right?
Right.
Mr. Jamboys, could you put up exhibit, I think it was 133, the picture of the ribs?
Yeah, make him do it. Oh, he is going to get hammered so hard. I think
We testified about
waiting.
what Dr. Chambliss described as soft tissue, small amount of soft tissue hemorrhage to the ribs before, right?
Yes.
And you had reviewed all the autopsy photos before,
Yes.
before testifying a couple of weeks ago,
Before testifying a week ago.
a week ago.
It's all blur. Like I said.
It could have been this morning for all I remember. Yeah. Had you seen this photo before?
I believe I have.
Okay. And do you see a shadow on this photo?
Yes.
I'm going to,
Yeah,
well, I hope
I
you
saw
don't
that
I'm gonna have
too.
to use this cursor so I can ask you questions.
Either you die in stage 1 or you don't.
I don't want anyone to mistake me as being a prosecutor.
Oh, they
This,
have been though.
This right here is what you said is
It's funny.
you identify as hemorrhage.
Yes.
And how about this?
That's shadow.
That shadow? Not hemorrhage, shadow.
Shadow.
What's behind the shadow?
Soft tissue.
Soft tissue. Can you say that there is no hemorrhage behind the shadow?
I can't say what's behind it because I can only see the surface.
Because you can't see it, right?
Correct.
Because of the shadow.
Correct.
This little mark right here is what you said is hemorrhage.
Yes.
And how about this mark right next to it?
That may be hemorrhage.
Might not be.
May not be.
And how about this right here?
Yes.
Yes.
That looks like hemorrhage to me.
Okay. And how about this right here?
That may also be hemorrhage.
How about this right up here?
That may be hemorrhage.
Okay. How about this area right here?
That I'm not sure.
Yeah, it looks similar, doesn't it?
Yes. It's in shadow.
It's in shadow, but it looks similar.
Yes.
Ouch.
We talked about this soft tissue hemorrhage, what had been identified by Dr. Chambliss when you testified a week ago, right?
Yes.
You agreed it could just be congestion.
It could be.
You agreed it's a non-specific finding.
Postmortem congestion is non-specific. Yes.
That postmortem lividity could cause what we're seeing in that picture.
Yes, I believe that's what I said.
Because when you're laying face down or on a side, the blood pools.
Yes.
You agreed that if it is hemorrhage, you have no ability to say when that injury occurred.
All I can say is that it appears to be fresh.
There's no injury on the that was noted externally.
Whoa, whoa,
on
whoa,
Julie
whoa,
Jensen's
whoa,
ribs,
whoa,
correct?
whoa,
Correct.
whoa, whoa.
There's no injury on her back.
Whoa. So they're looking at an image and saying, oh, it appears to be fresh. But you have no idea.
If you count her buttock,
I mean, I guess her back opposite the side of the ribs.
no.
No fluid in the bed.
No.
Nothing aspirated.
No, Dr. Chambliss did not report any aspiration.
Your understanding from review of all the records that Julie Jensen was drinking a lot of water, right?
Yes.
From review of the autopsy, does it appear that her body was able to produce urine?
Yes.
And I think you described it as a moderate amount of urine.
I forget what I said. Probably.
Is it a moderate amount of urine?
Yes.
I'm no medical doctor. But we're also not seeing the picture that they're looking at. Her opinion of it is a photograph that was taken in 1998. You look at pictures from 1998, can you clearly say that that was exactly what you're looking at? Because they're also showing there's some sort of shadowing. So they really can't tell. She's using the best guess. She could be wrong. She could be right. And that's what the defense is bringing out is that, are you sure what you're seeing is what you're seeing? But a lot of these pictures are not like your CSI pictures. They're not very super crystal clear. They probably would have been taken on one of those really bad cameras that they had back in the 90s. don't know. I don't really want to see pictures of dead bodies, especially in this case. But yeah,
Was it your
And-
testimony just earlier today that you think it was a second dose because there was some amount in her stomach,
Yes,
the half a teaspoon?
yes,
possibly.
You remember all the discussions about gastroparesis that we had, correct?
yes,
And delayed gastric emptying.
yes,
And the need to be able to say what was in those 22 ounces of stuff to be able to say whether or not that half a teaspoon would have been absorbed into her system.
could you put that a different way? I
Yeah,
don't quite.
she didn't like
She had
that.
I
22
think I get
ounces,
what you said, but I'm not.
she had 20,
Saying she had 22 ounces of fluid in there, and how much of that was actual bad stuff that killed her.
22 ounces of gastric contents, right?
Yes,
Aside from the description that it was green and had potatoes and pepper in it, we don't have a great description of it, do we?
we have quantification as far as the potato and pepper, and we have
Quantification.
the word fluid.
Yeah.
I believe that's what he used, the word fluid.
And we talked about what can cause delayed gastric emptying, right?
Yes,
And we went through a laundry list of things, of variables that may, in Julie Jensen's system, have caused her, I guess, sort of GI system to shut down.
yes, we did.
In terms of the possibility, or even just the likelihood, that this half a teaspoon could have been a remnant from an earlier dose.
Yes,
You'd agree that 55 micrograms per liter is almost an undetectable amount of ethylene glycol in her blood.
55 micrograms per milliliter.
And now I screwed that up, right?
It's near the threshold that some laboratories use for reporting. Some laboratories use the threshold of 50 micrograms per milliliter, and if they see a
Oh,
number under that, they may report as not detected
yes.
or as less than 50.
So it's near the cusp of what wouldn't even be detected by labs.
What wouldn't be reported. I'm not saying that they can't detect it. It's just that at a certain
Uh-huh.
number, a lab will choose to either report a result or not report a result. You could have 30, for example, and they would report less than 50. But less than 50 doesn't mean necessarily zero, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. So that's what they're trying to say, is that he was in the 24 to 48 hours prior, that he was giving her about this much in a glass of orange juice. That's about a shot. Giving her that much in a glass of orange juice over a 48-hour period of time, having her drink it with orange juice. But also, on the same hand, prosecution saying that she was afraid to eat or drink anything that her husband was giving her. So they never found any orange juice in her stomach. They just said liquid. Could have been water. And if you're giving somebody poison through water, that's detectable because of its taste. It makes it sweet. That's why they came up with this orange juice theory. So I didn't see any containers of orange juice in their fridge. I don't know. Something's just not adding up with all this bullshit. With those products causing liver to start shutting down. Oh man, there was so much crap shutting down on this poor woman. And I don't know if she did it herself or if he did it. I suspect that he did, but the prosecution is yet to prove it. They've left more questions than they've answered. So every time they ask a question, they just dig their shit deeper.
I got nothing else. Thank you.
Any redirect, Mr.
Very
Chairman?
briefly,
Go ahead.
could you do me the kindness of putting Exhibit 90 back up on the screen again?
He's going to lose on this. Just don't. Just let it go. You suck as a prosecutor. Just admit it.
Okay, thank you. Now, Dr. Mainland, you indicated that among the suicides, there were 2 not detected and 1 less than 20 milligrams per liter, correct?
Yes,
And did those 3 have anything in common with each other that you know of?
beside the fact that they were suicides,
Yes.
I believe that 2 of them had received treatment. I know that 1 of them had not.
Okay, so of the 2 not detected and 1 less than 20, of those 2, 3 of them had received medical treatment, correct?
No, 2 of them,
Which 2? You said 2 of these 3 had received treatment?
yes.
Okay, which 2? Do you remember which 2?
No, if memory serves me, I can certainly find that out for you. It'll take a while. One of those was a personal case of
But see, here's the weird part about it. Sounds like she was pretty vocal, but who was she vocal to? She was vocal to random strangers, but the people that she should trust, her best friends, things like that, she's not saying anything to them. She's not making any notations. This is a woman that took notes for every single thing, but there's no note of her saying, if something happens to me, it was my husband kind of thing. You're not seeing any of that information. I don't know. If I suspected my wife was trying to take me out, my ass would have written some notes that says, I am not planning on doing anything to myself. I am not trying to, well, what can I say here? I'm not trying to self-delete, and I would make sure that everybody knew this. I would make it loud and clear. Of course, this was 1998. Who knows what was going through her mind at the time or through his?
Mine, and that's why I remember that person had not had any treatment. I believe the other two did.
Okay. And the one that was a personal case of yours that had not had any treatment, you don't remember if it was the not detected or under 20?
No, I don't remember.
But all of the rest of them, excluding those three, all of the rest of them had ratios of 570, not less than 570, and up to 9,746 milligrams per liter, correct?
Yes.
And what about the non-determined?
So if you excluded those three, then the average would actually be higher than 2,072, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And by the way, I'm not done, so I would move exhibit. You can take that down now. Thank you. I move exhibit 133 into evidence.
It's received.
Yeah. Just needs to stop.
Sir, were you aware that what Mark Jensen said about what Julie Jensen had been eating or drinking in the day or two before she died?
I know Mark Jensen said she had been drinking a lot of water. As far as food, I don't recall.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Like I said, drinking a lot of water. Was she drinking a lot of orange juice?
Anything else, Mr. Barry?
Briefly.
Go ahead.
If you had excluded those three, the average would be higher, right?
Yes,
If you had looked at even fewer cases, the average would be higher.
depending on which few.
Sure. If your study listed, there's one that says 7,400, correct?
Yes.
There's one that says 9,746.
I agree with you, Andrea. I completely agree with you. It would be so painful that I could not imagine doing something like that to my wife. I mean, I see her in any sort of pain, and it tears me up deep down. Like, I mean, I think she broke her toe. She won't admit it because she ran into the side of the bed. Just, seeing her in pain, it hurts. It hurts. Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. I hate when people are like that. I hate when people do that.
Yes.
And then we'd have an average for what it would take, what would be found in a suicide, right?
In those three, yes.
And it would be even higher, wouldn't it?
Yes.
This isn't by any means a comprehensive analysis of ethylene glycol poisoning deaths in America over any defined period of time, is it?
No, it is not.
This is what you found based on your particular access from a few offices of information that you believe is related to ethylene glycol, isn't it?
Yes.
And nothing else,
Nothing else.
with all the limitations that I described earlier about lack of knowledge.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I can go.
Good.
Yes,
You're absolutely positively unequivocally completely finished. Yes.
please go away.
Does he have the exhibit? There's no exhibits over
Oh,
here.
Your Honor, I will say this. With respect to Exhibit 90, I inadvertently altered it. I wrote, for my own notes, I wrote MG/L. That was not on the original exhibit, so I've doctored the exhibit, so I want to put on the record that I did that. I can either white it out or put my initials next to it.
Why don't you put your initials next to it? I think that's the correct way of doing it. 90 moved in, and 133. Said they're done with their rebuttal? All right. Does the defense have any rebuttal?
We do not, Judge. Thank you.
All right.
Everybody take a big sigh of relief now. We are done with the testimony. All right. We got to do our work now, folks. We got to talk about jury instructions. We got to talk about other legal issues. So you get to go home. We can stay and work. But come back 8:30 sharp. Please don't talk about the case. We're getting really close where you can deliberate. Okay?
Oh. I gotta agree with you there. I saw that too, and Oh my God, that was so spooky. I mean, that is someone that has no feeling whatsoever, no remorse. Oh my God, it was just like, ooh, 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 creepy, creepy. That's someone I would not want to mess with. The Iceman. No, 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 no. Yeah, pulling stuff on people and walk away.
Have a good evening. See you tomorrow.
All right, so tomorrow will be closing arguments. I'm sure they've got a few things that they're going to work through at the end of this. Probably won't be too much. I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow night I will not be streaming this, but I will be over on.
Right. The jury is outside of the courtroom. I believe a couple days ago.
I will be on Talking Trash and Truths with Shelly tomorrow. If you don't know where to find her, let me see if I can pull that up real quick, because that's where I'm going to be tomorrow. I'm going to be on with her, and we're going to have a Shelly. We are going to have a very, very interesting conversation. Yes. She is really awesome. I've enjoyed all the interaction. Is that 3Ts? Yeah, that's 3Ts. That's where I'm going to be tomorrow. So I won't be streaming this part tomorrow. So if you're subscribed to her, then you definitely need to be over there. Let me see if I can find her channel, because I've got it here. Truce. So I will post this up right here. Oh, look at that. She's even got the channel hooked up right here. And I will post this in here for you guys so that way you can see it. That is where I will be tomorrow. 8 o'clock Eastern. Sauron Cool Frog. I am not getting into that. I am not getting into that right now. That's for another day. Wow. Yeah. That was a very, and I had no idea all that stuff was going on. I would just say I had no idea all that stuff that was going on, because I was spending time with my wife, and then I went and did a stream, and Cool Frog jumped in with me. Yes, heard something about it this morning. Oh, nice. Whoa. Now she still has access here if she does something that's untoward over here, then I will handle it then. I saw the way that stuff happened, and it was so weird. So weird. I just and I have to back Shelly up, and I congratulate the way that she handled that really, really quick. It was so quick that she just was like, I'm out. I'm not ruining my buddy's stream here. I'm going to go handle this my own way. And she immediately went and streamed on it. I think I saw her stream before I even knew what was going on with Cool Frog. She has her own channel, Andrea. She has her own channel. She already has it. All she has to do is stream there, and she could get people would come and see her. I think one thing that stuck out to me, and this is the only thing I'll say, is that for some reason she thought that everybody else owns Cool Frog's channel. Cool Frog owns his own channel. It's all about him. It is his show. What he says goes. and you respect that person for it. If I invite a guest on here and they disrespect another guest I've got on here, I would immediately remove them. No questions asked. Cool Frog agreed. He wasn't paying super close attention. So I don't know all the details of every single thing. I just caught some of it, but I understand where Cool Frog's position is, and that's his channel. This is my channel. I'm not going to let somebody disrespect people on my channel. Except for, Darth Hideous. Everybody can disrespect him. I'm just kidding. I like Darth. He's fun. We try to keep it clean here. I mean, I'll drop the F-bomb every so often, or say fuck. Somebody said that. It's like, oh, you don't cuss. I was like, well, if I don't see a need to, then there's not really a big problem with it. Also, whenever you have like younger nieces and nephews, you tend to not use it. Underhanded a little wasn't nice. Yeah, it wasn't. And I saw it. Everybody else saw it. And I think I want her to be able to redeem herself. That's my position on it. I want to give everybody a chance for redemption, but there are limits to what I will tolerate. And that's just where I'm at with it. So we're not going to talk about that. That's Cool Frog's show. That's Cool Frog's channel. But I will say tomorrow, big draw for you. It's time to use language, time not to. Yeah. I don't know. I appreciate everybody, and I've been on with Mighty Meat, I think, for one show, and he was like, "What? You just said F?" I was like, he was like, "No. We're gonna stop that right here, right now. We're gonna go off." I was like, "Oh, I've got no problem saying I just didn't see any reason for it." If you watch this stream, you've seen that I use that word quite often, probably more than I should, but I really don't give a fuck. How's that? Yes, I will completely agree with you there. She played dumb, then admitted she was just trolling. Yes, I agree. And that's not, to me, that's not appropriate. And I think she knows what she did wrong. And I'm going to say that I would hope that she reaches out to both Cool Frog and Shelly, because they were the only ones on there, and it is Cool Frog's channel, and give a sincere apology and take whatever licks that are coming to her. That would be my suggestion. Is, I've got no animosity towards her. I think it was underhanded, and it was a really shitty way to act. Sometimes people act shitty, but reach out to them, give an apology, and, take the brunt of whatever shit is going to be flung at you. Because I would hope I would hope that somebody would do the same for me. I really would hope that if I say something stupid, which I'm known to do quite often, you can ask my wife about that. I would hope that somebody would reach out and say, that was really stupid of you. All you need to do is just apologize to this person, make amends, and own it. Take the lumps. Take the lumps. I've done it before. I've done it so many times, because I've insulted really close friends, and had a high school friend I insulted pretty bad. Might have been that I slept with his ex-girlfriend, but that was that was a long time ago. We're actually still friends. I have a Facebook account, but I just don't use it because I hate Facebook. And we reach out to every so often, and we, you know, shoot the shit. He's been married, has a wonderful family, well, ex-wife, child, and, you know, played music, which was what we both were into at the time. So it's cool. We're just like, yeah, that was pretty stupid. Yeah, it was pretty stupid. Take it, own it, just like Andrea said. Own the error. You're good. You'll be so good. Well, you can't take that back. Yeah, you can. It's not about taking it back. Really, it's not about taking it back. It's about taking the lumps that you caused and own it. Really, take the lumps that you. If you do something stupid, you've got to have lower mind to control. No, no. I I did not know. I'll tell the story. Okay. I had a good friend of mine dating this girl. Now, you also have to understand that, see, at the time, I would have been 17. This girl would have been about 16. And my friend was also 17. Yeah, I understand. That's not what it was. Trust me. So I was working pipeline construction. I was in town maybe once every 3 months, and I came into town and this girl hits me up that I knew from dating one of my close friends. I hadn't seen my close friend, and she was just like, "Yeah, you heard Rick and I broke up." And me, being young and naive, did not think to ask, "So when did you break up?" Little did I know that she broke up with him the day before, because she knew I was going to be back in town and she wanted to get a little piece of me. So she did, of course. And she made sure that it was well known. And my friend was pretty pissed. And my other friends that were there also said, I'm like, what's the big deal? They broke up. He was like, yeah, you don't understand. They broke up yesterday. Yeah. I was like, well, I've been out of town for 3 months. How was I supposed to know? And that's whenever I had my friends tell me, oh, you have no idea. I'll get into that. How was I supposed to know? They said, well, you could have asked. So, yeah, I own it. I did really stupid. I didn't think. And yes, I was maybe thinking a little bit below, on the lower end. The smaller brain took over. But all good turns happen, because one of my really close friends, she is actually someone that, she was almost like a pimp in a way. She was sort of hooking me up with all these different girls by explaining to them how I was. And she came to me and said, hey, this particular person, she's while you're out of town, she's got some action going on. I'm like, oh, really? I should have known. So whenever I brought it up to her, she was like, oh, no, but I love you so much. So I kicked her to the curb and moved on with my life. And then 3 months later, she ran away from home and went to go live with her father. So at that age, you did your friend a favor in showing him who she is. Yes. I think so. And I think that's why we were able to remain good friends. Just because of that little interaction of really my bad behavior. Because, I had some good friends that called me out. I also found that, messing around with your friends' girlfriends, or, if you get later on in life, their wives, things of that sort, it's never going to end up well. It's always asking for trouble. Someone's always going to find out if you're cheating. It's always going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Either the guilt's going to get to one party or the other, or something of that sort. It's going to happen. So why do you want to risk it? Why would you want to risk it all for something as minute as that? I worked with guys that would, you work in a mechanic shop, and of course you get these lovely, lovely, very lovely women coming in wearing, sometimes scantily dressed. I don't know if it's intentional. It might be. I don't know. And of course, everybody's like, gorgeous, gorgeous. Look at that. She's so gorgeous, beautiful. Smash, pass. Get all of that. And I go, yeah, I'd smash it. But, I'm happy with my wife. Oh, I get this. Oh, you're telling me if this girl, just like threw herself upon you that you would turn it down? I'm like, yes, absolutely I would. Why would you do that? I mean, she's gorgeous. I was like, you know what? My wife beats these women 100 to 1 because I married her. These are a challenge. All these beautiful, beautiful women that you're seeing, you've got all kinds of challenges that you got to deal with. Me, I know what I'm going home to, whether she's horrible to me that day or nice to me, or whether she gives me a back rub or I give her a back rub. She's familiar, and I married her. Why would I throw all that away just for a cheap thrill of a roll in the hay? Doesn't make sense to me. Guy just looks at me, he goes, your wife must be absolutely gorgeous. I was like, she's the most beautiful woman in the world. And once you know that, she is the most beautiful woman in the world to me. Once you know that, nothing else matters. Yeah, you'll find some very beautiful women, but nothing like my wife. My wife fits me perfectly. So that's how I like being. Yeah, we should. I mean, that's what it's all about. Our wives are the bomb. I mean, if you say, well, she's, my wife's critical of her body. She goes, I'm putting on a little bit of weight. I'm like, yeah, but so am I. I mean, I'm not really worried about it. And if you're feeling uncomfortable about it, then you know what to do. I don't have to tell her that, she wants to get on the treadmill, or she wants to run, or we go for walks, which I love going for walks with my wife because we talk about the most random shit. So that's what I enjoy. I mean, and I get to wake up in the morning and bring her a cup of coffee. That's the bomb right there. Everybody should be able to do that. They should be able to wake up in the morning with the person that they love, bring them a cup of coffee, have dogs like climb all over you because they're so happy that you're awake. Don't know. It still bothers me that they're weird like that. And still have a good relationship with the person that you married. And if, I tell people, it's like, I've been married for, 18 years now, 15 years. I don't know. I lose track of time. It seems like not long ago that we got married. Like, it just seems like yesterday. And I enjoy being married to my wife. She's just awesome. I can't even begin to describe the enjoyment that I get out of that. And it would hurt if I lost her. And I'm sure that she would feel the same way, although I told her that she should move on and remarry if she wanted to, but at least have some fun. Oh, well, this is for you and your wonderful husband. They got to spend 38 years getting to know you. And still, after those 38 years, he still didn't know all about you because there was much more to learn. And we appreciate you. And we're so glad to have you around, Andrea. And Thursday, cheers again, because he missed out on a whole lot of you. So we're so happy that we're so happy. I can't even begin to say. Can't even begin to say. But love you guys. Oh, don't cry. Don't cry. Put a smile on. Big smiles. Big smiles. That's all. Big smiles.
Well, I did mention jury instructions.
We'll get back to
I
I don't need Andrea crying now.
Has the defense had a chance to look at those instructions that were used?
I have had a chance to review them. I have not had a chance to talk to co-counsel about them.
Okay, you want to do that right now?
I would like to, Judge, but before we do that, can I just put an objection on the record?
Sure.
Okay, so when Mr. Fazio was testifying, I objected and said it was based upon the motion in limine because she had testified that Julie told her that she had told police officers about being in danger or about telling police officers about thinking Mark was going to kill her. And I believe that is outside of, I think that's inconsistent with the ruling this court made that no statements to law enforcement and the letter were not coming in. So that's why I made that objection.
All right.
I didn't ask for any additional instruction because I thought it would just.
It's noted for the record.
Thank you.
Okay, you want some time then to look at the jury instructions? Did the state want to do the same thing?
I think what I'd like to do is this. I'd like us to go back to our office and then prepare the proposed substantive jury instructions and procedural jury instructions that we want in this case and provide them to court and counsel, and we can discuss them then tomorrow morning. I did not look at I knew that there were instructions obviously for the last trial, but I haven't read them, so I don't remember what was done.
The only one that I noticed that was a little different that I have not seen, there was a specific instruction as to Laura Costner. I don't know why. Maybe somebody could tell me, but that was the only one that stood out that was different. All the other ones were the normal ones used in a criminal trial with the elements of the crime.
Well, I thought the reasonable doubt instruction was different too, because I thought there was a sentence added into the reasonable doubt.
I didn't notice that.
But I'm the only one here that was at the last trial, and I have absolutely no recollection of why we had a special Laura Costner instruction. No idea at all.
It was probably made by the defense. That's my reading of it.
Well, I certainly wasn't going to ask for a special instruction. I don't even know what the instruction was. I think that we should just use the same standard substantive instruction with respect to first degree intentional homicide. I think we should use the standard reasonable doubt instruction, and I don't think we should have any instruction for Laura Costner.
Well, I think we should have the lawyers give a chance to look at it. I released the jury. Obviously, they don't have any other duties today. We're just going to have to wait as to the defendant leaving. But what I want the attorneys to do then, take your time this evening or whatever time you're going to do it and come up with some instructions for me. And I'll look at them in the morning and we'll go through each one of them. Okay. A couple other housekeeping matters while we are waiting and we have the time. I don't want, I shouldn't start it out that way. Let me ask this, the state, who's doing the closing for the state? Who's doing the closing for the defense? Okay. I gave you an hour and a half for your opening.
Judge is so over these people.
Yeah, I think it will be similar in length, and I know it was somewhat shorter than an hour.
He is so over them.
Any idea?
We don't have the rebuttal, so I do think it'll be a little longer.
Okay. The reason I bring it up because the poor court reporter has to take it. And when we're doing a closing, there's no time where we're not talking. It's talking continuous. And I got to figure out when to do a break for the jury. So if I have some idea, I can look at the clock and say, okay, she said an hour and a half. He said hour and a half. I can figure it out. We're not going to do both closings in my instruction straight through. That doesn't work. The jury can't take it. The court reporter can't take it. So give me some idea when you come back tomorrow. The other thing I wanted to bring up, obviously, we have 16 jurors. So I am going to strike 4 tomorrow. It'll just be random. I'm just going to use numbers. But I'm not going to release.
Yeah, but what's he going to be smoking?
Put them in a separate location.
That's the question.
They're not going to leave. They're not going to be able to discuss the case. But if we need to take one from the 4, we'll bring that person in. I don't want to send them home and then something happens. We've gone too long in this trial for something to go wrong. So if anybody has an objection to that, say it now.
I don't have an objection to that. It's just I seem to have some vague recollection of case law that says that.
Oh no, Pixel. No, this husband has been in prison the whole time. He's been in prison since 2007, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, and he's basically been given life. So, yeah, this was kicked out by Judge Schrader, I believe. I would have to double check on that. I sort of came late in on this one, and I don't have that kind of research under my belt. But I believe that Judge Schrader, which was the Rittenhouse judge, kicked it back out and said that there were inconsistencies or some issues going on here. So that's the only reason that they're having this retrial. It's not the actual original trial. This is a case from 2007, and he has not been free. He has been jailed the whole time. He's just getting a second chance, and not an appeal, just a second chance of rehearing it.
That you can't bring in an alternate and put them back in the pack with the jury without the defendant's consent.
I know.
So the defendant's got to consent.
I understand it, but I don't want to send the 4 home.
Excellent.
You don't need the state's consent, but I do think.
And I know Judge, you guys always quote Judge Schrader from the last case. He kept the jury. I think he had 8 alternates, and he kept them in the courthouse. He didn't let them go home.
I did read that, Judge, and all I would ask is allow us time to just talk about it and we can let the court know.
If you got a different idea, let me know. But here's my problem. If I send the 12 back and they deliberate and the 4 went home, something happens to the one in the that are part of the 12. What do we do?
And I understand the court's concerns based on the length of this trial. I just want a chance to look at the case Attorney Jamboys is talking about and talk to a counsel. But we can let the court know in the
I know you can, if there's a agreement, you could take a verdict with 7 jurors. I know that, but it has to be agreed, right?
That we would agree, but yes, you can.
So think of that. Or any other housekeeping matters from the state?
Yeah. Yeah, I could not imagine that either. Let's bring that up. I will open that up in a new tab there. And I'll bring it up afterwards.
Anything else on the defense? All right, let's make sure the jury's gone before we pick back the defendant. So we'll see you at 8:30. We'll do jury instruction. Okay. Have a good evening.
All right. So let's bring this up. Here we go. We're sharing this tab right here. Ooh, wow. That's big and massive and makes me look white, pale, washed out. Yes, I am a very pasty white man in this light. Good Lord. So, why don't we do this? We will bring this up right here and see if we can zoom in a little bit. From Prairie, Wisconsin, man Mark Jensen charges murdered his wife Julie Griffin Jensen, 1998. Written by the deceased prior to her death, expressing suspicion of her husband's intentions. She investigated her husband, checked his planner, photographed a note, documented her suspicions, blah, blah, blah. So let's go to the trial. Special prosecutor Jamboys contended poisoned his wife, blah, blah. Extended, discussed poisoning. Jailhouse associate. Appellate proceedings on November 19th, 2013. Federal judge overturned Jensen's conviction and ordered he be released from prison within 90 days. The court agreed with Jensen's argument that the state used his dead wife's words violate his constitutional rights to confront his witness. Upheld the district court decision on September 8th, 2015. Prosecutors decided to retry Jensen in 2016. 2017, Kenosha Circuit Judge Chad Kirkman reinstated Mark Jensen's conviction. In 2020, the Court of Appeals District 2 issued a summary disposition reversing Kirkman's decision to reinstate the conviction. The matter was remanded to the Circuit Court for further proceedings, including trial. So he's been just in and out of jail over this stuff. Oof, that's rough. That could ruin a man. The kids are grown. Kids are grown now. So, yeah, feel for the kids. Yeah, one of them testified today. So he actually was testifying of what was going on with his mother at that period of time, from what he could remember from, an 8-year-old child. So, yeah, it was rough. I sort of feel for the kids. I mean, he got sent to prison whenever the oldest one was 17. So he got to present happiness after this, if not found guilty. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why they're doing this retrial, just basically to settle it once and for all. But he's going to be ostracized the rest of his life. Just imagine that this guy, and I think he did it personally. I just don't like his face. That could be me. That's my prejudice. What's my tattoo? Which one? I've got 13 tattoos, and they vary. So I've got a tattoo of a phoenix. I've got a tattoo of a dragon. I've got a tattoo of a skull, of a Indian face like Pocahontas kind of thing. I have a tattoo of a skull. I have a tattoo of a goon right there on my finger. That's a goon. If you never watched Popeye, you don't know what a goon is. The one on your lower arm you just saw. Let's see. This one here. That one there. That would be a dragon. That was done by a tattoo artist in Miami. That one there, That one there. That is a phoenix, and that's a cover up. So the cover up is, yes, I had a naked woman tattooed on that arm. It was a horrible tattoo. It looked like a jailhouse tattoo. This is whenever you're young, broke, and stupid. That's really good, Andrea. That's really good. So I had this tattoo that would look, it was pretty vulgar. And so while I was in New Orleans, and this was right after Katrina, because we had friends that lived in New Orleans. Right after Katrina, went to a little tattoo shop there to sort of support the local businesses. And I had a lady, beautiful lady, that was the owner of the shop. It was Electric Ladyland Tattoos. Sat down prior day and drew out something, and it was a phoenix. And I was like, that is very fitting. One, I had a vulgar tattoo that really offended the mother-in-law whenever she first saw that. She was not impressed. To have it, a naked lady being covered up by another lady and making it a phoenix, it was just sort of ironic that I do something like that. And so yeah, I spent 4.5, 5 hours in a chair getting it tattooed up. And yes, your arm tends to feel the pain. I would suggest as you get older, if you plan on getting tattoos, just know the pain receptors really increase, because my first few tattoos, I barely remember them, and I wasn't drunk. But Leany green peen. You women and your peens. I don't get it. I don't get it. And I know that women like to say, "Oh no, we don't look at the size." No, trust me, you do. I know. Women enjoy the size, girth, length, all that stuff. Although if they are with you, they are just happy with what you got. Just saying. If they're with you, they're happy. And there's a little bit more to it than just the peen. But I've never heard a woman say that she wanted to have something smaller. I'll leave that there, because that just gets too deep, too wide of a channel to cross. Lenny Onks has it. What? I didn't get that. What's it sound like? Sad, know how you save. Yeah. Pain tattoos. Ooh. But that's all I've got for you tonight. As wonderful as you are, I will not be here tomorrow. I will be over on Talking Trash and Truce tomorrow night. Oh, Rabbit, good to see you. Good to see you, Rabbit. So glad you could join us as I'm getting ready to head out. I'm so sorry. No, I will be on Talking Trash. Let me get that thing out of my mouth there, because I will be on Talking Trash and Truths tomorrow. It will be a wonderful, wonderful show, I am sure. I've provided the link. You'll have to scroll back if you can. I should pin it in there. But I will not be here tomorrow. I will be over on Talking Trash and Truce with Shelly tomorrow. We're going to have a nice show. It will be so entertaining. I like Shelly. She's She is that boisterous Jersey girl, like just where she's unfiltered 100% of the time, and she'll let it just all hang out and does not care. I mean, she does. Don't get me wrong, she really does care, but she's a character. Yes. 3Ts. Yeah. She's great. And we enjoy her so much. And we're going to be on there tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. It could be a short one, it could be a long one, but hopefully everybody leaves satisfied. That's the plan. Long, short, doesn't matter, just as long as they leave satisfied. Anyhow, I appreciate all of you. It has been a wonderful night. And of course, I am sure that Cool Frog will probably be streaming tomorrow at some point in time. He went 10 hours this morning, and he'll probably go for, I think he went for a few more hours this afternoon. I had no idea all the stuff that went on, and it'll all work out. It'll all work out. Cool Frog's got a good head on his shoulders, and his car breaking down was just horrible. Hearing that story, I'm like, oh, I feel so bad because I've seen it happen so many times. But we will prevail. And so with all of this and me going off on just wild random tangents, I honestly don't know if this guy's guilty or not. I'm sure they'll be doing closing statements tomorrow. I don't think I'll get a chance to run a show tomorrow because I'm gonna be, like I said, be on Shelley's. So I will either cover it after I'm done with Shelley, or I might just do an early stream and post it up there for you guys to see and hang out, give shit. So oh, that's so bad. So bad. But love you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, chat. And make sure you hit like and subscribe. You see my links over there. I also have a buy me a cup of coffee. That was something that Cool Frog turned me on to. It was like, oh, you can buy the Shizzy a cup of coffee. Here, I'll throw it up there really quick. There you go. Oh, that's Linktree. But it's in my Linktree. You can buy me a cup of coffee if you want. You don't have to. Trust me. Do I need coffee this time of morning? No, probably need like less alcohol this time of morning, but it's there. It's there if you want to donate. I don't need it. So do not break yourself doing it, because I just enjoy this so much. It's so much fun. What more can I say? I think I've said it all. I don't know. But anyhow. I meant to say, peace, y'all.
Exótica.